Okay. Thank you. Welcome to the council meeting for Watford Borough Council. My name is Councillor Amanda Grimston and I'm the chairman of Watford Borough Council. Also present today are Mayor Peter Taylor and all the councillors for Watford. Unless we've received any apologies, they will come shortly. We are supported today by Donna Nolan, the Chief Executive, and Carol Chen, the Group Head of Democracy and Governance, Alison Scott, the Director of Finance, Hannah Doney, the Head of Finance, and officers from Democratic Services. I would like to remind all members to stand when they speak. If you are wearing a face mask during the meeting, please remove it when speaking to ensure you can be heard clearly. If you wish to speak or when I ask you to vote, please raise your hand so that officers and I can see clearly. Please only turn on your microphone when I invite you to speak. I would also like to remind members that when we vote on the budget, we are required by law to have a named vote. At that point, I will ask the Group Head of Democracy and Governance to ask each member in turn how they wish to vote. Before we continue, I just need to advise that we are not expecting any fire drills this evening. Therefore, if the alarm sounds, please leave via the nearest fire exit and make your way downstairs, outside and around to the library, where we will gather and check everyone is accounted for. Apologies for absence. I believe we have received apologies from Councillor Stiff. Are there any other apologies? Okay. Item 2, disclosures of vest. I now invite Carol to advise members regarding their interest on item 12, the members' allowances 2022.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. With regard to item 12, all members have been given a dispensation by me as the Council's monitoring officer to conduct and vote on this item under the Council's Code of Conduct.
Right. Do members have any interest to declare on any of the other items on tonight's agenda?
I declare interest with one of the motion, which will be the last one regards West Hart Teaching Hospital Trust, where I worked.
In a taxi motion, yeah, I have a private hire taxi badge on that motion. I have conflict of interest.
High conflict of interest, being the chair of taxi trade before.
Thank you, Councillor Ahmed. Right.
Sorry. Does it include relatives?
I would say yes. So in terms of the, because we specifically have an amendment relating to the taxes, if you have a relative, a close relative of yours, or somebody living with you who has a taxi license, then you need to declare an interest in that, and you won't be able to vote on the amendment.
I don't think my wife's driving a taxi.
Okay.
I know my brother and brother.
Sorry, can you please use your mic?
Sorry, apologies. I don't know, my brother-in-law and brother used to, I don't know if they still do, but I'll still declare it.
Yeah, I would like to declare interest. My husband's a hackney carriage driver.
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. Do members agree that I sign the minutes of council held on the 17th of October 2022 as a correct record? Thank you. Okay. The minutes are agreed. Item number 4, official announcements. Watford Remembrance Service on the 11th of November at Vicarage Road War Memorial, and then on the 13th of November at the Town Hall, which this year began with a procession from St Mary's Church. Everybody involved, I think, really enjoyed the event, and it was very poignant, which I do wish that we carry on and only increase with. It's something that makes Watford very great. Holocaust Memorial Day. Last Friday was Holocaust Memorial Day, and I had the honour with the Mayor, Peter Taylor, to lay flowers at the Anne Frank tree outside the Town Hall. It's an important day to remember those that were victims of the Holocaust, both Jews and others persecuted by the Nazis and others killed during more recent genocides. The King's New Honours List. This year we had the first King's New Honours List. On behalf of the Council, I would like to congratulate Dr. Mary Ramsey, who has been awarded Commander of the Order of the British Empire for her services to public health. Felicity Evans, who has been awarded Member of the Order of the British Empire for services to children in Hertfordshire, and Rosalind Bluestone, who's been awarded Member of the Order of the British Empire for services to humanitarian aid in the UK and overseas. And I'm sure you'll all join me in wishing sincere congratulations. Fair Trade Lunch. Watford and Three Rivers Fair Trade has organised a lunch on Friday the 3rd of March at West Herts College. The cost is £10 for a 3-course meal. I will say to everyone, the food at the college is absolutely superb. So if you could possibly make it, it's obviously all for a good cause. If you're interested in any more information, it is on the council's intranet, or contact Councillor Abby Martins for further information. So then we have neighbourhood locality funds. All councillors are reminded that they need to submit their neighbourhood locality fund applications by the end of February to ensure they can be completed by the start of the pre-election period on the 17th of March. All applications have to be submitted and signed off through the members' portal. The balance still available to spend is also shown on the portal. If you have any difficulties, please contact Democratic Services. Also on the 3rd of March is the Chairman's Gala Dinner. It's at West Herts Golf Club. It's a 3-course meal with teas and coffees and entertainment and a disco at the end. Should be an absolute fantastic evening, and I'd really appreciate any support given by yourselves. Council Vice Chairman. At the next meeting, I will be announcing the nominations for the 23-24 Vice Chairman. Each person nominated will need to be proposed and seconded. Council will then be asked to vote for their preferred candidate. The Democratic Services Manager will be writing to all councillors shortly with further details. Chairman's recent events. I have continued to represent the council at many events since the last council. Some of the events have included many which celebrate our diverse community, both young and old. Black History Month lunch at Wellspring Church, arts and crafts exhibition organised by Caretech, celebrating diversity and creativity of children, young people and adults with mental health and learning disabilities. I've been to the Romanian Traditional Dance and Music Festival, the 11th birthday anniversary of the Watford Portuguese Association, Ascot Road Primary School, where the children had done beautiful pieces of art, which the business Cortlands have put up on the hoarding. So I will ask that you all go and have a look at it, because it really does stand out, and it makes all the building work that's going on there a little bit brighter. I've also been delighted to participate in events which recognise the achievements and service of our residents and local organisations. the opening of the new Boots Opticians, celebrating local business Boom Bar's first birthday, and opening Treats, which is a new sweet place on the high street. So all go and have a look and have a chat to them. It's absolutely fantastic. Really beautiful shop as well. We have been celebrating Watford's rich heritage and culture. I have attended the raising of the centenary flag with the mayor, fireworks in Casbury Park, raising the white ribbon flag. Representing Watford in our region as part of national events, I attended One Vision's Queen's Green Canopy of Trees planting ceremony, High Sheriff Justice Service at St Albans Abbey, and observed the Holocaust Memorial Day, which included laying flowers at the Anne Frank tree. It's clearly been a great privilege to be a part of these events. Okay, so now I go on to agenda item number 5, the Mayor's report. A report of the Mayor is attached to the agenda. Please can you raise your hands now if you wish to ask a question of the Mayor. I will then make a note of all members who wish to ask a question, read it out to make sure that I've everybody who has been indicated. Can you keep your hands raised, please? So, Councillor Tree and Councillor Bell. Oh, Nigel, Ashley, Richard, and Matt. Right. Okay. And is there anyone else? No, that seems to be it. Okay. Thank you. I'd just like to remind you all, each question I will have no longer than 1 minute per question. There are to be no statements or supplementaries, except for Councillor Bell as the leader of the opposition group. Only members on this list may ask questions. Okay. Right, I just want to go through. The following members have been indicated they wish to ask a question. So that's Councillor Favour, Asif, Nigel Bell, Asif Khan, Richard Smith, and Matt Tremaine. Have I got everybody? Great, good. I now invite the Mayor to present his report.
Thank you, Councillor Grimstone. Of course, happy to answer questions on any aspect of the report. I would just like to take this opportunity, as it's the middle of winter, to thank those people working for New Hope and the Council's homeless team. We've got our special severe weather protocol in place at the moment, which makes sure that no one has to sleep rough in our town. I think it's really important work, but happy to answer questions from the councillors this evening.
Thanks, Chairman. My surname is Ezifed.
Favour, please, can you stand?
Thank you. Apologies. I said my surname is pronounced as Ezifed. Sorry. Thank you. So thanks for your report, Mayor. I'm particularly interested in the White Ribbon accreditation. I'm very pleased that we've reached that milestone. Although in your report you did say the Deputy Mayor as well as some female staff, we act as White Ribbon champions. I'm one of them as well. But I just wanted to ask, in terms of moving forward, you said we're going to develop a 3-year action plan that work closely with key partners. I wanted to know when we are going to start that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ezefed, for asking about this. So the group has been formed, the working party involving members and officers. They had the first meeting, I believe it was about 10 days ago. And of course, from that will flow a really important piece of work for our town. I think all of us agree that we want to live in a town free of violence and intimidation against women and girls. It, of course, follows a motion that this council passed. And so we're now taking that forward. It's a critical part of our council's action plan, and I know the officers are really passionate about this as well. So I'm looking forward to working both internally, but also with organisations right across Watford, and of course would welcome any suggestions that you may have on how we make sure that we take this issue very seriously.
Thank you.
Councillor Nigel Bell.
Thank you, Chair. And I was going to raise the NHS and hospitals, but obviously that comes in the motion later, so I won't raise that. But I did raise at the Cabinet recently a question of customer service. And in fact, since the Cabinet meeting, I've had two elderly residents. One lady called me and she was almost in tears because she couldn't contact and get in touch with Ringo, which is obviously what you've got to get in touch with if you're on a controlled parking zone area. She, because had difficulty with the internet, luckily she had a neighbour who was very good for her and helped her. Then I had another lady phone me on Sunday who lives on the Holywell estate. And she said she got a letter. I said, look, I've got this letter from customer services at the town hall saying if you want to discuss your situation, get in touch on www.watford. She said, look, I haven't got internet. What do I do? So it's just concern really that as I raised it at Cabinet, I know the Chief Executive was there, that we still need to remember that there were a lot of people, not just elderly, but others who can't for whatever reason use the internet. And from a customer service point of view and a understanding people's point of view, can we please still take this in hand? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Of course, always very happy to look at individual circumstances and situations. One thing I would say is that I think we're pretty much the first council in the whole of Hertfordshire to reopen our town centre post the pandemic. Of course, it's open 5 days a week, and we have a really excellent team who I've shadowed, who take the phone calls, and I know many people who phone. Hundreds of people phone the council every week, and they do an excellent service responding to them. Of course, many people are choosing to move online, and we've seen over time the numbers that choose to do that increasing. But I completely accept the point that not everybody uses the internet, and of course that's why we have the town centre customer service centre that's open, and we also have the phone lines. And finally, we're working really closely with W3RT on a digital inclusion programme. I was able to see that operating in Holywell a few weeks ago, where the older residents from a very diverse range of background were being given IT literacy skills. So I think we're doing lots in this area, but as I say, I'm really happy to look into the individual cases that he raises.
Yes, you have a secondary.
Yeah, thank you for that. And, I take on board what you're saying. But again, just to still push the point, and again, what I've raised at the Cabinet meeting, I appreciate the customer service centre is open now and that we've got more staff coming in. But, I did raise the point at Cabinet, the fact that I remember there was one day I was there, it was starting to rain, and an elderly lady had come, I think it was 12 o'clock on a Tuesday. She didn't realise when she got here, and of course it wasn't going to open until 1 o'clock. So I know we put lots of things out, and you put about Watford out there. Can we still make sure that we properly communicate to everybody properly the opening times of the town hall as well? So that's important as well. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. I mean, it is, as you say, something that we continue to promote. Obviously, there's all the signage there, but also online and in council publications about the opening times of our customer service centre. I mean, I think one thing just to say on this, I know you've raised it a number of times, I would want to pay tribute to the team at the customer service centre. We've got huge cost of living pressures, we've got a lot of needs in the town, and I know that they deal with many difficult cases, people in financial situations, threatened with homelessness, a whole range of mental health problems, and they deal with an incredibly compassionate and professional way, and I pay tribute to them for that.
Thank you, Peter, and I totally agree. They really work hard. Councillor Asif Khan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is similar to what my colleague raised, but I just wanted to ask, following the conviction of the serving police officer David Carrick for rape, sexual assault and false imprisonment of women, and this follows the appalling murders of Sabina Nessa, Sarah Everard, the sisters Viva Henry and Nicole Smallman. Does the Mayor agree with me that violence, he does, but violence against women and girls is abhorrent, and men need to do more to campaign against it?
Thank you, Councillor Khan. Of course, I agree that there's always more that can be done to challenge discriminatory views and ones that relate to hate crimes. I know that this is something that Hertfordshire Police take really seriously. So we had our first female chief inspector recently Chief Inspector Dan Whiteside. We've now got a new Chief Inspector, Andy Wiseman. I'd like to welcome him to the town. But for their police, it's really important. And of course, the issues in the Metropolitan Police have been highlighted in the press. But I agree with him. It's important for all of us to challenge those views, to speak to our own children, as I've mentioned before, speaking to our sons about what is acceptable and not, and making sure that we live in a tolerant society where no one suffers prejudice.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Richard Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, I welcome the new artificial grass at Everett Rovers Football Club. I believe it's going to be starting to be built very soon. It's, a great addition for the local team. But we also have another very good local team, and that's Herons FC, who meet at the Hair Breaks. They do some great work with very local kids in the community. And I think they could also do with more of our support, not only in terms of their ground and where they play, but also their kit and some of the storage facilities there as well. So will the Mayor join me in working out different ways that we can help support this local football team as well?
Thank you, Councillor Smith. It's almost like there's an election imminent, but all I'd say on that, I have, of course, visited Herons and seen the fantastic work that they do, and of course visited Everett Rovers. They received that funding as part of the new scheme that we've launched with our neighbourhood SIL. I think it's really important that we make sure that local community groups that do so much good work in our town can benefit from that. We allocated £165,000 to 16 good causes and local organisations. We're going to grow that. We're going to grow the amount that clubs can receive. And of course, it's really important that all of us work with our local groups, such as the Herons, and see what can we do to make those facilities even better.
Councillor Matchamy.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to ask the Mayor, do you agree with Michael Gove that the U-turn on targets for house building mean hundreds of thousands of homes are at risk? Thank you. Yes, certainly, of course. I appreciate that Gove does cause amusement amongst all of us. Michael Gove, saying the U-turn on house building targets puts hundreds of thousands of homes at risk.
Thank you, Councillor Tremaine. Obviously, he said, do we agree with Michael Gove, which is hard to agree. All I would say is that for many years, I've made it very clear that housing targets put unfair pressure on places like Watford. I know that at the last election, Labour tried to blame it all on me. The reality was that the Conservative Party in 2018 had tripled Watford's housing target, had complained that we'd only delivered half of the target they'd set, and then, of course, punished us for not meeting that target. And we campaigned long and hard against the housing targets. The government have now indicated they may wish to change. Of course, none of the housing planning rules have changed at all, and we don't know what will replace housing targets. But I think we've got to be really clear that actually we've got a housing crisis, but the solution is not to build all of the houses on places like Watford that are already busy, congested and very much developed. And we've got to look at how we build, for example, new towns with the infrastructure to support those residents.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Item agenda number 6, questions by members of the council. I have no written questions. Agenda item number 7, petitions. I've not received any. Item number 8, urgent business, and there is no urgent business. Agenda item 9, appointment of the chair of licensing committee. A report of the Democratic Services Manager has been circulated with the agenda. I will move the recommendations. The report is asking for the council to appoint Councillor Richard Wenham as chair of licensing committee, and if this is approved, to appoint Councillor Mark Hoffman as vice chair. Please, can I have a seconder?
I'd like to second that, Chair.
Do any members wish to speak? You have up to 5 minutes each. Councillor Dennis Watling.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to say quickly on behalf of the Labour Group, we will be voting for Richard to be taking over as chair, gladly, and with a caveat. I think I'll say he chaired the last meeting, I think at last minute, and did a very good job. So we'll be glad to back this.
Many thanks. So does the council agree the recommendations set out in the agenda pack on pages 12 and 13? All in favour, please show. Yes. Okay, thank you. That recommendation has been carried. Agenda item number 10, request from Hertsmere Borough Council asking Watford to make a joint application for a principal area boundary review. A report of the Group Head of Democracy and Governance has been circulated with the agenda. I call upon Councillor Watkin to move the report and recommendation. Councillor Watkin, you have up to 7 minutes.
I won't need 7 minutes, but thank you very much. Chairman, Mayor and colleagues, you have before you the papers presented recently to Hertsmere Borough Council proposing that together we ask the Local Government Boundary Commission for England to undertake a principal area boundary review of theirs and our joint boundaries to realign certain Hertsmere polling districts where there are a number of perceived anomalies in the boundaries between those districts. At this stage, there is no commitment that any such changes will be brought into effect, or indeed when the Commission will undertake such a review. However, should the review be carried out and the Commission suggests boundary changes, we will be consulted, and at that time, we will need to look closely at the detail. So on this clear understanding, I have no hesitation in asking your agreement to this proposal.
Thank you, Councillor Watkin. Mayor Taylor, would you like to second?
I'll second and reserve my right to speak.
Thank you. Do any other members wish to speak? You have up to 5 minutes. Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I won't take 5 minutes. I certainly support this now being put in an official way, which wasn't before Christmas. But we certainly support this. And as Councillor Watkins says, it doesn't in any way mean that we have to officially support the whole thing yet. So some of it certainly makes sense. Certainly, but the Oxley bit, Hayden Road, no one's got any objection. I wouldn't have thought to that. But certainly the other part, we can look at. But we certainly have to support this official position.
Thank you. I have nobody else that wishes to speak. Mayor Taylor, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Grimston. Just to add, we've of course consulted with councillors in both Meriden and Oxley wards. There are some oddities as a former resident of Hayden Road myself, when you have the even numbers in Watford and the odd numbers in Hertsmere. You have, of course, both councils collecting bins and all the rest of it. I think it's right to just look at some of these historic boundaries that I believe are due to underground rivers rather than the reality of the neighbourhoods where people live. So, of course, all this will be looked at. But I know that from speaking to residents, many feel that this is long overdue.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Can I invite Councillor Watkin to sum up? You have up to 3 minutes.
There's no need for
Thank you. Can I ask, does the council agree the recommendations set out in the agenda pack on page 15? All those in favour, please show. That's unanimous. Thank you. The recommendation has been carried. It's going very well. Right. Item 11, new polling station locations for May 2023. A report of the Electoral Services Manager has been circulated with the agenda. May I invite Councillor Watkin to move the report and recommendations. Councillor Watkin, you have up to 7 minutes.
Thank you again, Chairman, and Mayor, Chairman and colleagues. The Election Act of 2022 requires that voters bring to the polling station an approved form of identification, otherwise known as a photo identity, so they can vote. This means that polling staff will need to check that the voting ID against the individual, and in cases where voters are wearing full face covering, they will need to be removed by the voter for the check to be made. Therefore, these need to be in an area set aside, which is fairly private, where these full face coverings can be removed, a check made, and the voter can be put back on the the voter can then put back on the full face covering. In addition, the Act requires polling stations to be accessible. Following the inspections from our team, and I congratulate them on the work they've done on this, it's been necessary to make some changes to the locations of 2 polling stations and the addition of 2 further polling stations for the new KD polling district to reduce the numbers attending at Chesbrook Education Support Centre and LC polling district due to the new developments at Riverwell starting to be occupied. At present, the LC polling district, due to the current small numbers of voters it is intended to use, have St Matthew's Church as their polling station, but the returning officer is actively looking for a new venue closer to the development. The other new KD polling district will be accommodated in a new venue, and Chesbrook will have a reduced number of polling stations, going down from 3 to 2. I will say in passing that the whole photo ID requirement may well result in fewer voters bothering to vote, or worse, being turned away at the polling station for lack of it, and is putting massive increased pressure on our already heavily committed elections team. In my view, it is flawed in what it's trying to do. To reduce election fraud, when all recent cases of electoral fraud occurred with postal voters who do not require a photo ID to be accepted. There is a table on pages 37 and 38 which explains the reasoning in more detail, so I trust that Council will have no problem in accepting these recommendations. Thank you.
And can I have a seconder, please?
Somebody?
Please. Mayor Taylor, thank you. Do you wish to speak? No. Thank you. Do other members wish to speak? Councillor Nigel Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And yeah, we overall support this. I certainly echo and agree, and I'm sure our party does, with the well, relatively a bad idea, or certainly impractical idea about the photo ID. We all know that this is the government saying it's on fraud, but as you say, most of the fraud has been on postal voting, ironically. I think we understand that, and talked to the elections officer, he's had to review, because of the 1922 Act, or the 2022 Act, he's had to review all the polling stations. I know that's not been easy. So we did have some issues, obviously, with the moving Holyrood across the busy Exchange Road to St Mary's, but I understand that they're talking about more space, although I think there's also a question about money, and the charge in there has to be mentioned, which isn't mentioned in the report. And yes, on Chesbrook, I agree with you. I think we both kind of declare an interest there. We're both on the management committee of Chesbrook. That had nothing to do.
I didn't think about that. We are on the management committee,
but it's good that the at least Chesbrook is going to be slightly reduced, the pressure on them for the one day, and that obviously the officers are going to work with getting across to the third of the people in Holywell where they have to go now on the new one in Scammell Way. That's fine. So yeah, overall, you know, we support it, and obviously this is what's had to be done, unfortunately. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Watkin, can I ask you to sum up? You have up to 3 minutes.
No, I won't sum up, but I will actually admit that I should have said that I am on the management committee of Chesbrook. I think it's a fairly long line from where this is coming from, but I think it's just worth putting on record that Councillor Bell and I are on that management committee. But other than that, thank you, Councillor Bell, for your support.
So does the council agree the recommendations are set out on page 35 of the agenda pack? All those in favour, please show. Right, the recommendation is carried. Thank you. Agenda item 12, members' allowances 2022-2023. A report of the Democratic Services Manager has been circulated in the agenda pack. I invite, it's the Councillor Watkin show, to move the recommendation. Councillor Watkin, you have up to 7 minutes, which I know you will not use.
Thank you, Chair. I'm accustomed as I am to public speaking. Those of you who were councillors last year will recall that we agreed to accept the recommendations of the Independent Member Remuneration Panel, that for the following years, allowances covering the basic allowance and all those with special responsibility allowances, portfolio holders and so on, and the Mayor, as all listed on paragraph 7 of the report, should receive an annual increment in line with the general pay award as agreed by the LGA. Simple, you might think. Well, no, because it's the first time in recent memory the unions agreed to an across-the-board increase of £1,992, irrespective of role. Should this be applied to our allowances, in certain instances, individuals could see their annual allowance increasing by 65%, clearly morally unacceptable. So after discussions with our managing director, the head of legal services and the chair of the IMRP, it was agreed that a far more equitable solution for this year would be to increase all the specified allowances by 5%, reflecting the overall effect of the general agreement on the council's budget. In view of the agreement to accept the scheme last year and the advice on how it should be applied in these extraordinary circumstances, and it is only applying to this year but have to be reviewed next year and whatever happens, I move that we accept the proposed increase as specified in the report. Thank you.
Can I have a seconder, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'll second it and reserve my right to vote.
Thank you, Councillor Tim Williams. Do other members wish to speak? Nigel Bell.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we accept that this is a one-off, as Councillor Watkins says, for this year. And of course, it's quite right that we should respect the Independent Remuneration Panel's report. But that, yeah, this year, I won't say unusually, but obviously the employers and the unions actually came to agreement very quickly compared to other disputes. We won't go into that, but that's a kind of good and practical thing. And it is going to mean that many of the workers at Watford, and as well as other local authority workers, will get a much better rise than they would normally get. But of course, it would be wrong if the councillors and others got the awards if it was matched. So, yeah, so we agree that the 5%. Makes sense, and as a one-off, and obviously it's going to be looked at by the IMRP within the next year. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Watkins, can I invite you to sum up, and you have up to 3 minutes?
I have nothing to add, Chairman. I think the Councillor Bell has summed it up very well, and I'm glad for his support.
Thank you. So does the council agree the recommendations? All those in favour, please show.
That's unanimous.
Okay, so. That recommendation has been carried. Thank you. It was going so well. Okay, agenda item 13. Unlucky for some. Budget and council tax resolutions 2023. 24. Yeah, 24. A report of the Cabinet meeting held on the 16th of January, Licensing Committee on 12th of January, and a report of the Director of Finance on the Council Tax Resolution 2023-2024 has been circulated. I will ask Carol to explain the procedure for dealing with this item.
Thank you, Chair. So the Mayor, as proposer of the budget, will be allowed to speak for up to 20 minutes. Councillor Bell, as leader of the Labour Group, will be allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes. Other than the Mayor, who has the right to sum up, all other councillors will only be allowed to speak once during this debate and for up to 5 minutes. We have been notified of an amendment from the Labour Group, which I understand will be moved by Councillor Bell, and that's been circulated on your table, so you should all have that. And I would remind members that it is now a legal requirement to have a named vote on this item. So at the end of the debate, I will read out names in turn at the conclusion, and that will be on the amendment first, followed then by on the substantive motion. So there will be 2 named votes. Thank you.
I now invite the Mayor to move the report.
Thank you, Councillor Grimston. We thought we'd give Councillor Watkin a rest. So I rise to propose my budget for the coming financial year and set out our priorities for Watford. I would first like to thank members and officers for their work over many months to pore over spreadsheets, crunch the numbers, and then agree our proposals, which will allow us to meet our financial challenges in a way that protects our vital frontline services. This budget is presented in difficult circumstances locally and nationally. Today, the International Monetary Fund have forecast that this year, the UK economy will shrink and perform worse than any other advanced economy, including Russia. Economic mismanagement by central government does have an impact on all of us. Over the last 10 years, Watford Council's funding from central government has been cut in real terms by 55%. It is more than halved. So the financial pressures on us are great, but I'm confident that the decisions my cabinet and I have made for this year ahead are the right ones, and will ensure that residents continue to receive high quality services here in Watford. Due to good budget decisions over many years, we are thankfully not in a position where I need to force through significant cuts to services. This Liberal Democrat-run council has for many years ensured good financial management, meaning that we collect more of our funding from commercial property investments than from council tax receipts. This extra income provides funding for services residents expect this council to provide. We are also working ever more closely with our neighbouring councils to ensure that we can provide excellent services that are resilient and deliver value for money. This includes our new shared legal, planning enforcement and building control services with St Albans City and District Council. Despite this good management, we are not immune from the impact of inflation. Over the last year, this has risen to over 10%, far above the 2.99% maximum by which we can increase our share of council tax. We are also not immune to wider economic issues and the potential recession over the next year. As economic activity slows and the effect this has on people's financial situations, we can expect an increase in demand on many of our services. To deal with this reality, we need to make efficiency savings, do some things differently, and raise fees and charges, all of which we set out in our budget report here tonight. When preparing the budget before you this evening, I have had three things in mind throughout. Firstly, we must protect frontline services. Secondly, we must ensure that we do everything possible to respond to the cost of living crisis. And thirdly, we must play our part in addressing the climate and ecological emergency. So on frontline services, I know how important our services are to our residents. This budget makes it clear that we will protect frontline services. We'll continue to make sure that we have some of the best parks in the country, and will invest in improved sports facilities in Woodside and in cricket facilities at Orchard Park. We'll make sure that our streets are clean and tidy and step up our enforcement action to tackle littering and fly tipping. We'll continue to deliver a variety of popular free community events so that our residents can enjoy themselves, spend time with their family and friends, and feel part of the Watford community. These events include the What's On summer activities for young people, the big screen, the big beach, and of course our firework display. Our events are a reminder of the work that the council does to support the community, and it's one of the hundreds of services we provide that residents rely on. An overarching mission with this budget is to protect these frontline services despite our real terms cutting funding. To balance the books, we have had to take some tough decisions, but at each stage we have ensured that residents receive services that don't reduce in quality. We have a good track record of delivering services to budget, achieving efficiency savings and generating additional income in order to provide excellent public services. In order to do this going forward, we need to raise council tax by 2.99% and seek to increase fees and charges. This has been a difficult decision, but we need to be realistic about the challenges councils are facing with rising inflation and central government cuts. For a Band D property, that will mean an extra 16 pence per week, which will come to Watford Borough Council. To put the 2.99% in context, this is less than the 4.99% increase from Hertfordshire County Council, and our Conservative Police and Crime Commissioner will increase his share of council tax by 6.7%. So being a council that is run effectively means making difficult choices. It's worth considering this evening some of the proposed savings that were put forward and which we rejected. One of them was that we could reduce the number of green flag parks from 17 to 9. One of them was that we could end our park ranger service. It was also suggested we could end our out of hours service at weekends and reduce the opening hours of our customer service centre. We could stop all community events. We could close our healthy hub. We could end our home energy improvements. And we could reduce fly tipping and littering enforcement. Of course, we rejected all of those because we considered the impact on our residents. But there are many councils up and down the country who will be implementing these cuts or similar cuts. We are not in that position because of the sensible financial decisions we've made. However, I would like to take this opportunity to make it clear to government that local council funding really needs to be improved. If real terms cuts to funding continue, even well-managed councils like ours will need to take difficult decisions, including cuts to important public services. Turning to the cost of living crisis, in the coming year, as in previous years, the cost of living emergency will be high on our agenda, and our budget this evening ensures that the council will be able to continue to support those most in need. Our response to the cost of living emergency would not be as broad or as strong as it is without the work of charities and community groups who offer support, including helping people with food and essential items. Some of this support and the work we are leading on with welcoming spaces receives funding from our community fund, and we'll continue to provide this funding for as long as there is need for them. We are also protecting funding that we give to the Citizens Advice Watford, who do amazing work supporting residents with advice, including on debt, housing and legal issues. I know that without this work, many more issues would need to be dealt with by the council, and without Citizens Advice, the issues many residents face would escalate and cause even more disruption and worry in their lives. I do not underestimate the reality that for some people, council tax is difficult to afford. We'll continue to support residents, for example, by agreeing alternative payment schedules in some cases, or those facing severe financial hardship, referring them towards our council tax reduction schemes, which for some individuals will be 100% reduction in their council tax bills. I also want to make sure that these schemes are well advertised so that those who need them are able to access them. Apologies, it's quite a lot to say. Ending rough sleeping and working with others to prevent homelessness is a key priority for me and this administration. This budget sees money allocated for our rent deposit guarantee scheme, which means that we can assist people and provide even more homelessness accommodation. We are also, as part of our budget, increasing fees and charges so that either full cost recovery was retained or we can maintain the same level of subsidy that we have done in the past. At the same time, we have maintained concessionary rates for some of our services. I am confident that with these measures in place to maintain revenue, we can continue to provide high quality services for residents here in Watford. We have been meticulous at finding efficiency savings in our budget to ensure that residents receive value for money. It is because of this approach that the long-term careful management of investment income over many years that we have been able to avoid cuts that we might otherwise have needed. And finally, on the climate change, too often in politics, there's a short-term thinking. Unless climate change is addressed, we will experience global crises, and these will have an effect on us locally in Watford too. We need to play our part to address this issue. I am proud that we have committed significant capital investment in this budget to help tackle climate change. To help achieve our goals and deliver our climate change and ecological emergency action plan, which will be released later this year, we have set aside £500,000 on top of the £420,000 in our sustainability reserve. This will make a huge difference in our fight against climate change and support the council, residents and businesses to work together to protect the planet. In addition to this, we'll use our capital budget to fund projects that will have a positive ecological impact locally. Over the 3 years of the medium-term financial strategy ahead of you tonight, we are proposing to spend £135,000 on new water fountains in our parks to encourage more use of our parks and open spaces and reduce plastic pollution. On top of that, £400,000 will go on our green spaces strategy. We'll also continue to deliver on my promise to plant 20,000 trees across the borough in the next 4 years and invest £50,000 per year over the next 3 years and an extra £25,000 a year to replace shrubs in our open green spaces. We will be working closely, and I know Councillor Williams will be very much involved with this, we'll be working closely with Veolia to make it easier for people living in flats to recycle food waste. We'll also be encouraging more people to switch to electric cars and delivering on our transforming travel in Watford strategy. That is another £200,000 investment this year to help us reach our climate change targets. Alongside this significant investment in reducing carbon dioxide emissions, it is important too that we protect nature so that we can increase biodiversity in our town. Across the MTFS period covered in today's budget, I can announce that we're investing £250,000 in our River Corn restoration project, and we'll invest £75,000 in the Casbury Park Wetlands project. These projects will be vital to ensuring we increase biodiversity in Watford. So despite the challenges, we will be making sure that we plan for the future, and in particular that we do what we can to play our part in tackling climate change. Our emerging environmental strategy will be meaningless if we do not put our money where our mouth is and invest in reducing our ecological footprint and reach net zero by 2030. This budget is ambitious for Watford and for our residents. It delivers on my manifesto promises, investing in our parks and protecting the services most important to residents in our town. It will provide support in the current cost of living crisis and provides the long-term thinking needed to protect Watford's environment for the future. And I urge you to support it here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I understand that Councillor Watkin is seconding the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Councillor Watkin. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. I will speak now rather than hold on. Chairman, Mayor, fellow councillors, when I addressed you last year, I stressed how uncertain was our financial future. Then inflation was beginning to rise and had reached 5.4%. We planned for a pay award of 2%, and the Bank of England base rate was 0.75%. Today, CTI stands at over 10%, base lending rate is 3.5%, and the pay award increased our costs by 5%. But I can give you some good news. The government's local settlement in December increased our new homes bonus to £1 million, but we can anticipate that this could be its last year. So following cuts in business rates and other grants, we'll actually want £258,000 better off than we'd expected, which we will add to our contingency reserve to offset some of the likely cost increases, such as the next pay award. Back to the lesson of good news. Over the 3-year period of the MTFS, our annual government funding will drop by £500,000 per annum, which together with at best a flat rate of property income will be major challenges to balance our budget going forward. So what are we going to do to meet these risks? In 23-24, we're planning for a reduction in our net expenditure of £209,000, making a total net expenditure of £14.96 million. But we will do this without cutting any frontline services. This expenditure will be funded from 2.7 million business rates, 1.2 million in other government funding, a contribution of £600,000 from our reserves, and the balance of 10.3 million coming from council tax, which will include the 2.99% that the Mayor has just referred to. We will continue to look to develop commercial opportunities to offset costs and seek to share services with other authorities to ensure the sustainability of our services to residents while providing career opportunities for our staff. Our property portfolio is still the largest single source of revenue for Watford, but because of constraints imposed on us by central government, it does not represent the growth opportunity it once did. However, I'm pleased to say that Croxley Business Park's occupancy rates remain on par with our rivals, and we are constantly investing in it to ensure it continues to attract new clients. The Mayor outlined the 6% increase in fees and charges. It's our aim to work towards our services becoming cost neutral, so that their costs are borne by the people using them rather than being subsidised by the wider community. Some increases in charges set by central government will be less, while those set by SLM, our leisure centres operator, will be greater to reflect the increase in their operational costs. Overall, the net increase to our income from fees and charges will be £252,000. The key measure of our economic stability is our ability to maintain a suitable level in our economic impact reserve and general fund working balances. For the next few years, they will remain largely stable from about 3.6 million, maybe dropping to 3.4 million, but the outlook beyond that does look less certain. Funding our ambitious capital programme next year will require £46 million raised from a mix of central government grants, support from Hertfordshire LEP, funds from Section 106 and SIL, with borrowings taking up the rest. The recent increase in interest charges will cost us £1.25 million in this coming year, growing to just under £2 million in FY 25-26. But this will not impact on the programme. We are committed to deliver. We will use these capital funds to deliver major improvements in our parks and green infrastructure, as the Mayor outlined, and to invest heavily in sustainable transport and EV charging. We'll also be investing £5 million to provide social and affordable homes through our jointly owned housing developer, Heart Homes. In spite of our bid for levelling up funds not being successful, we are absolutely committed to the transformation of our town into a true civic centre to incorporate the museum, a new reception area, a cafe, and transform workspaces for our officers, and an innovation hub for new businesses to grow in the town. This will also result in annual savings of £300,000 in operating costs. The transformation of the Coliseum will require £6 million, and we look forward to its reopening under a new operator in the near future. Other schemes include the Watford Business Park Gateway scheme of industrial units and investment in Riverwell, which will generate significant income for the council. In summary, we are facing major challenges, but with our continued prudent yet bold management of our finances, there will be no loss in services. We will deliver the Mayor's manifesto pledges while ensuring the financial stability of this borough. I commend this budget.
I commend you, Councillor Watkin, with 10 seconds to go. Now, can I invite Councillor Bell to move an amendment and speak? Councillor Bell, you have up to 10 minutes.
I won't take 10 minutes. I'll just move that very short amendment. Obviously, as you'll see there, taxi fees to be frozen and remain at 2022-23 levels. All fee cuts introduced for 23-24 to go ahead. And obviously that to come from the Economic Impact Reserve. As you see there, and that's gone through the finance manager today. And obviously that takes into account the very important, obviously, taxi trade and all their families, as I'm sure Councillor Shafiq and others here would note. Replying obviously to the Mayor and obviously what Councillor Watkins said, we meet today after a very difficult year for so many of our residents, as the Mayor says in his presentation, and Councillor Watkins stated at the Cabinet on the 16th of January. And it's mentioned in the minutes. I seem to remember that the then Chancellor of the Exchequer, Rishi Sunak, last January failed to read the room when Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves called for a proper windfall tax to ease the burden on the cost of living on so many of our residents here and across the country. And that was, of course, before the invasion of Ukraine on the 24th of February last year. And international events were used by the Chancellor and the present government as reasons for inflation climbing to a 40-year high. Of course, what a lot has happened since then, as the Mayor's indicated, including that terrible invasion, the change of 2 Prime Ministers, and that Chancellor is now number 10. And in all that time, local government finance has continued to be stretched with so-called efficiency savings across the board. And of course, the present Prime Minister being caught out on camera last summer explaining how he wanted to change the financial criteria to make it easier to fund councils in the relative well-off south compared to the Midlands and the north. Now, we know Watford, as a small district council, one of the smallest, despite being in that relatively better off south, has been vulnerable to changes in government grant over the years, especially since the years of austerity started, obviously under the coalition government, as I'm sure you'll all acknowledge, the Conservative Liberal Democrat government policies in 2010. But sadly, well, it's the truth, Chair, isn't it? It's the truth. That's when it started. And sadly, continuing up to the present day. So to have to continue austerity policies after the shock of COVID and lockdown clearly has made it more difficult for councils like ours and others in Hertfordshire. And we welcome the cooperation, as the Mayor said, and the partnership working where possible, such as with St Albans now, and with shared services, obviously with Three Rivers, that's been continuing. Obviously accepting that we should obviously scrutinise that when we need to. And also the work that's been going on with all the voluntary sector, as the Mayor said, and we had a good partnership, and there's good working relationship across the county at the time of COVID. And I was pleased, obviously, that sort of continued in many ways. And always the initiatives on homelessness and helping charities, the Mayor mentioned again, we agree with. And again, I'm pleased he mentioned, and I've got it written down here already, the praising the work of the CAB in Watford Citizens Advice Bureau. And I mean, I think the recent report from the Chief Officer, Emma Bergen, really brought home the reality of the lives of so many of our most vulnerable residents. And of course, the issue there that the CAB's had to deal with is it's increasingly those that we may have thought not so vulnerable, those who are only just managing, if you like, are also being affected. We know the work of Home Start Plus, of course, our food banks in the town. We'd like to pay tribute to all of those. And of course, again, as I said, the work of Fiona Miller at the Women's Centre, doing all they and she can to raise money in innovative ways. So while we agree on a lot of the work in combating the cost of living crisis that the Mayor and the administration have done, we would obviously have a slightly different emphasis if we were in power. Obviously, looking at the voluntary sector again, I think we do need to look at how you finance the voluntary sector, and in particular, going back to looking at how the Women's Centre is funded, remembering how that we used to fund, that was part of our frontline funding back in 2011. I appreciate that was the previous mayor who changed that in 2011, but I really do think when you think of the problems that the Women's Centre have had with funding, that we should look to go back to how we funded it back then, and how obviously yourselves funded it, because 2011, you'd been in power 9 years then. So that's something I think we should look at. We have asked council finance officers to look at the freezing certain charges, and that's obviously why we've got this short amendment. On the question of the green bin, obviously there were many residents who questioned in 2020 why they had to pay for a green bin when they already paid council tax for their rubbish to be taken away. And now obviously you're proposing this 25% hike in that charge of the one green bin. So that's going to be a hard charge again to justify when we want to everyone to go green. Never mind the obviously the possibly increase for the second green bin, and I know that's for only some groups and commercial organisations. But obviously we want to try and encourage our residents, council taxpayers, to properly go green. So this is obviously going to be difficult. On the capital expenditure, which obviously Councillor Watkin mentioned, and the Mayor and the MTFs, of course, inflation has obviously hit hard on our commercial income. And obviously, I appreciate the money that's being spent on the 7.7 million upgrade to the town hall. That's obviously why we're here tonight, and the 6 million to the Coliseum. Now, and of course, the Coliseum is respected, as a great site, and obviously for the, so many people obviously want to come and play here, and BBC concert orchestra and everything else. And obviously, the 7.7 million, as you said, for the town hall. Well, I think it's going to be harder to persuade many of our residents that it's right to spend so much on the town hall. I agree, obviously it's got to be made a better place and carbon neutral and everything else, all the right things. But of course, there's one thing a lot of our residents will be saying, why are you spending it for, where you lot meet in the town hall? But there's a bit more to it, I understand that. Obviously you're going to have to take a bit more putting that across. It's good to see plans for Woodside, which obviously came to the last cabinet, and obviously I know Councillor Williams has done a lot on this. I'm sure our bowls club members, as well as boxing club members and others, will want reassurance about their future venues, and all those who just want to enjoy the green spaces in Woodside. But obviously that's for the future, and let's hope that is secured. We, of course, I think the chair talked about the celebrating the 100 years of Watford at the start, and of course we all want to see Watford's rich diversity from all our communities help to thrive. As we've recently celebrated that 100 years of our centenary as a borough, we want to make sure that no groups are underrepresented, and that the rich diversity of Watford, especially when you look at the latest census, which shows the total change in the makeup of the town, that we should make sure that, for example, when the Coliseum is finished, when the town hall is finished, and other areas, that we make sure that all our town's diversity and different communities can properly take part. I will say a few more things. I don't know what my time's going, but I know a lot of the things. The climate emergency. Now, that yes, I agree. That's very important that we properly invest there. I know we've got a motion later on coming up, and obviously that'll come up again. But I mean, yes, the 625,000 that Councillor Watkins says about being taken from reserves. Well, obviously we have to be careful on that. Once you take it out of reserves, it's gone. But that needs to be watched, of course. But again, the 46 million on capital spend, are we confident? Obviously, with inflation at the moment, we hope that's coming down. But with other future economic circumstances, are we confident that we can still carry on with all that investment, future capital that you're proposing? So, it'd be interesting to hear that. But overall, I'll leave it there and see what others have to say. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, councillor Bell. Can I have a seconder for the amendment, please? Councillor Asif Khan, do you wish to speak?
No, I reserve my right to speak later.
Thank you. We will now debate the original motion and the amendment. Please raise your hands if you wish to speak. So speakers have 5 minutes. Sorry, can you raise your hands again? Tim, Glenn, Ian. Steve Johnson.
Glenn, Ian, Dennis, Richard William, Steve Johnson.
Yeah, I think
I want Matt.
Much me. Who knew?
Can you just go through one at a time?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so speakers, you have 5 minutes. Those who seconded and reserved their right to speak will need to speak now.
No, that's
That's afterwards.
Yeah.
Okay, just trying to push this evening through. Okay, can I have Councillor Glenn Saffrey?
Thank you. I'm not accustomed to going first. So I just wanted to say I'm delighted to see the commencement of investment, obviously, in Woodside Sports Village. I'd like to pay tribute to the Mayor delivering so many of his manifesto commitments against such adverse headwinds so quickly. I just pick up on what was mentioned about the voluntary sector. I think we've given unbelievable support to the voluntary sector in Watford. I've seen it firsthand as a trustee of Home Start and in my work as a councillor. We've delivered and continue to expand neighbourhood SIL grants. We've established the community fund to support charities through a pandemic, now a cost of living crisis. And I know, again, firsthand that those grants were a vital support to some organisations that probably wouldn't have got through the pandemic without them. We've also obviously worked in unison with New Hope and 1YMCA to deliver a nationally exemplary programme for reducing homelessness that was featured in the BBC, and it is something that everybody in this town can be extremely proud of. And I'll pick up just specifically on the amendment, because I've been the chair of licensing now since 2020. I've worked extremely closely with Watford Borough Council's licensing team. They are excellent. They've worked extremely hard to keep costs to a minimum. Even in these unprecedentedly tough times, they've found savings that have actually enabled us to reduce some private hire licensing costs. Their hard work has made sure fees haven't had to increase since 2017, and the council's door is always open to support drivers. We've just approved the adoption of card machines as a licensing condition, with widespread support from the trade and the public to encourage increased custom and support them in their livelihood. And I hope that does so. These fees, of course, are kept under regular and judicious review, and the team, and I know the new licensing chair, will continue to look for innovative and forward-thinking ways to support our local taxi trade, as they did during COVID, with grants, advice, and a flexible and supportive approach. I must also say that at a time of continuing economic uncertainty and an unprecedented squeeze on council finances by a government that has no regard for local authorities, eating further into an economic impact reserve that's already projected to reduce by over £500,000 would be simply irresponsible. So I will, of course, support the budget and commend the Mayor's budget, and I will not support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ian Stokesbury.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak, and for the Mayor and for all the work that officers have done to prepare tonight's work. I'm going to speak in part on my portfolio, which is sustainability and transport, and then, of course, come to the amendment proposed. Well, firstly, can we really trust government to keep their eye on the prize when it comes to the big issue of the climate emergency? Frankly, with the Conservatives in charge, I think the answer is no. So it's absolutely right that we're doing so much in our budget and in our policies to address this critical concern. So just to go back and cover some of the points, strategic planning on transport routes for buses, walking and cycling, working with the county council to make sure that's delivered both in our plans, but also in the County Council's strategy. 2, strategic planning on improvements to our rivers, which was touched on earlier, our wetlands and nature spaces. And this will really help ensure that residents have access to incredibly wonderful, beautiful and thriving nature areas in our town, which is only exacerbated in terms of criticality by the recent years where we were stuck through COVID, just how important green spaces were. Councillor Bell made reference to it, but we've been investing strategically in unprecedented ways on the energy efficiencies of our buildings, and hence why we're here tonight. I would note, Councillor Bell, that you mentioned in passing that more needs to be done to advertise the other things being done for the building, and you touched on the community sector as well. Well, one of the real ambitions of the future for the town hall as well is to make sure that we open our buildings to communities and also to the voluntary sector and make this a thriving hub for them. So I think it's not just something we should mention in passing, it's something we should actually celebrate as our future ambition for the town hall. I'd also like to thank the Mayor for supporting the work we did recently on consulting for our sustainability strategy, both in our environmental and ecological responses, and for the officers that have been working on that work and now the subsequent delivery plan to follow. I must say that residents are really supportive of just how ambitious those targets were, and of course now the challenge is in delivering them. We're a leading council nationwide already for the work we do to support home energy efficiency improvements for residents. We're already a leading council on deploying EV charge points, and we're making sure that remains instilled and forefront in our budget this year. In total, we're planning on spending almost £1 million on sustainability and nature activities just this year. And again, I'd like to thank members and officers for all the work on this. Finally, just to turn to the taxi fees and charges. It's very easy to put down an amendment 4 minutes before a budget and then try to expect the authority, or sorry, the Lib Dem group to look at that and take it with the lack of seriousness that you've submitted it at 4 minutes before a budget. But what I would say is we've been working strategically with the trade. What we want to make sure is that their trade thrives. We've been investing in ANPR on the high street, not only for making sure that Hackney Carriage has really good and authoritative access to that high street, but also our buses, and it further limits chaos on that high street and makes it a more safe space for pedestrians. We've invested in taxi ranks. We've brought forward taxi ranks on High Street and on Market Street and are looking at them right across the town. We're planning a proper strategic review through the unmet demand survey, which is partly why these fees have to go up this year for the first time since 2017. And that unmet demand survey is not only a statutory objective and requirement for us, but also a way that we can assess and plan the future of the trade. It's a critical thing and not something to play games with. So I will be supporting the budget and commend everyone for the hard work, and I will not be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis Watling.
Hello, thank you, Chair. Just want to speak on the mention. I just want to take this time to raise a slight concern I have with it. Again, in the confines of a professional disagreement rather than any form of attack. I just note that the collection of bulky items is going up by 36% in this budget. Of an increase to £45, for example, for up to 3 bulky items. Fly tipping in my ward, Callaland, is pretty horrendous. And a lot of the feedback that I get off of residents of an idea is they seem to think that it's when people move out and they can't afford to have their items be collected because of whatever additional costs or perhaps through sheer laziness. I'm just questioning whether it would create a rise in fly tipping in the ward. So, for example, to give a personal anecdote, reported 3 bits of fly tipping in the last week and was glad to hear that Viola had picked it all up by Friday. I go down on Saturday to take some reported and sorted photos in the morning on my way to go watch a football team in London that I won't mention. I come back after the game and there's now a bed dumped at the top of Lowestoft Road. There's loads of bin bags across St Albans Road, as well as bedding items, a pushchair and a speaker system at the top of the caravan part of Gammons Lane. I'm just questioning how more there would be if people, like I said, say that they're not... they're concerned that their ability to afford the collection of items. So again, just wanted to raise that as a concern on the budget on behalf of residents I represent in Callaland.
Thank you. Councillor Tim Williams.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Yeah, I basically wanted to comment just on the garden waste. I know, appreciate that is one of the items on here. When we brought in the garden waste service charges in September 2020, it was with a heavy heart. And likewise, this proposed increase is also with a heavy heart and only proposed after a lot of consideration and with the financial pressures, as Peter Taylor and Mark Watkins highlighted. It is the first increase since 2020. And even now, with this proposed increase, it is still a council subsidised service. Interesting to note, when we were benchmarking with other authorities, this fee in Watford is in the lower quartile of councils, and £60 seems to be quite a common amount rather than the £50 that is now being proposed. And yet, by the way, Labour-run Brent were charging £60 last year, previously Labour-run Harrow £65, Labour-run Enfield £50. You can go through the facts and you can see it all across the board. Likewise, the proposed increase in additional bins is also in line with what other local authorities are charging. And coming back to, I think it's Councillor Bell's point, additional bin charges for local groups like schools, scouts, charities is still going to be the £50 basic charge, not the high amount for their additional bins. I still feel for a doorstep collection service at less than £2 a visit, then it is an extremely good value for money. And if a resident doesn't want to sign up for garden waste and compost at home, well, good for them, that's ideal. I know Ben Watkins just mentioned about the bulky waste charging. I appreciate it is one of the usual points issued there. Again, even with this proposed increase, Watford will be one of the lowest, if not the lowest in Hertfordshire. And yes, Labour-run Stevenage last year were charging £48, and no doubt this will be increasing this year. Fly tipping over the COVID period did increase throughout Hertfordshire. And basically, yes, it is now dropping down, and Watford's fly tipping figures dropped down by 15% last year, but fly tipping is still an issue, there's no doubts about it. We do have 3 sets of CCTV cameras out there. They are operational, and we are basically looking at those figures at the moment, and it is a trial period, but we're pleased to get them up there, and that is going to be a great deterrent in Watford. Again, overall, I do welcome this budget for the reasons Peter Taylor and Councillor Watkins have stated. But the project that I'm most keen on this year is the extension of the food waste to large flatted developments in the town. And we're aiming to have this up and running this year. And also, at the same time, we're going to have a big push on just getting residents to buy into the food waste throughout the time. We're going to have a waste analysis done this spring. I'm still adamant not everybody is recycling their food waste and putting it into the food bin and doing it. I'm sure we all do it. But yes, if we can get more people doing that, then despite the great inroads we've achieved in our recycling rates over the last 3 or 4 years, we'll get the percentage rate even higher. And I think that's a good goal on the sustainability argument. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. Can I have now Councillor Mattramy?
Thank you, Chair. It's 5 minutes, is it? We've got. I'll try and fill that time if I can. 4 minutes and 55, then get on with that. First of all, I'd like to say thank you very much for the minutes, if I may, to Hannah Doney and her team, who have done a fantastic job of supporting us in the Finance Scrutiny Committee over the last year, as they usually do. As with previous years in Finance Scrutiny Committee, we've encouraged a culture of learning with training sessions of relevance to members and committee of the committee and the wider council. Obviously, we've reviewed the financial reporting for revenue and capital accounts, being mindful of the changes in reserves, and monitored vacancy rates for the council as well. Obviously, lots of people have touched on items which I'll try and whistle through some of them. So obviously the 600,000 over the medium-term financial strategy. Yes, I mean, clearly, that is, councils are having a really tough time across the country. They absolutely are. And it does show, without banging a drum, the disastrous results of the experiment in austerity that were pursued from 2010 to 2015, but that have been pursued since then as well. And, it's clearly something that is affecting Watford as it is affecting other parts of the country, but it's something that, is so unnecessary in terms of the impact that it's had. And motion about the hospital later on, you will obviously know part of that is the consequence of government attitude towards properly funding services. So obviously the pay awards have had an impact as well, which has brought some unpredictability to what's going on. The capital programme has been subject to uncertainty from COVID-19 in 2020-21 and 21-22, which has pushed out expenditure to later dates, which has made things very difficult. And obviously, that's got inflationary pressure on the supply chain, which is negatively impacting those council projects and the budgets that are available to them, which means that, that needs to be kept a definite eye on. And of course, there's been significant pressure from energy price inflation that's been taking place as well. And there's the absence of the cap for local authorities to factor into that as well. All of this obviously is highly risky, and there are the use of the reserves for plugging the budgetary gap for the revenue budget that we were talking about. Now, one of the benefits that Watford does have, of course, is that all the sort of flat and house building that's been going on has meant that the council tax base has gone up. So there is more revenue coming in from that perspective, which is quite interesting. But still, a theme of this budget is the increase in fees and charges that are taking place. So let's ignore the statutory charges, which obviously we can't do anything about. Let's even ignore those really extreme outliers that people have been talking about as well. I want to talk about the 6% by which most charges are going up. Now, I understand that that's because of the increased cost of staffing following the pay negotiation that took place, since officer time makes up most of the cost of most of the charges being paid by residents. And I suspect that the 6% is going to be described as a real terms cut in fees and charges. But I think that that's a dangerous misnomer if we fall into that trap of doing so. And the reality is that, these increases in fees and charges, for them to be a real terms cut, as we all know, residents' incomes would have to be rising with inflation, and of course they are not. As has been mentioned by Councillor Watkin earlier on, CPI was 10.5% in December of 2022, CPIH 9.2%, and the retail price index a whopping 13.4%. Food price inflation is even higher at around 15% in December. And yet the salaries that people have, this sort of potential golden ticket whereby that description could be appropriate, are not keeping pace with inflation. The poor old public sector is getting a pay rise of just 3.3%. So real pay is falling and not even remaining static by keeping pace with inflation. So added to this is the massive increase in mortgages and rents that people are experiencing, as interest rates sit at 3.5%, and as has been touched on, likely to raise to 4% when the Bank of England Monetary Policy Committee next meets. So these charges will hit some people very, very hard. Most likely those at the lower half of the income scale, and probably disproportionately likely to need local authority help and services. So let's be honest about how we describe it. So I think it is important in conclusion to say that the amendment, I think, is a worthy one, because it is trying to make proper impact on a sector that's very important, and will have an impact in terms of the public that use those services as well. And really, when you have 600,000 that you're pulling out of the economic impact reserve, another 12,000 is, it is to be considered, and it is not to be done lightly, but it is something that is but a drop compared to what's already happened. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Tremaine. You had 10 seconds left. Councillor Richard Wenham, please.
Oh, thank you. Fabulous Councillor Saffery and Councillor Stotesbury made my points for me earlier, but I'd just like to reaffirm I agree exactly what they said. I'd like to thank them both for the help they've given me so far, and I also do look forward to working with the trade going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And last but by no means least, Councillor Stephen Johnson.
Thank you. You saved the best till last.
Exactly.
Last year, I didn't stand here because we weren't here, we were in the Coliseum. But I made the point, how can you have an alternative budget which is only half a page of A4? But you've outdone it this year because it's a sentence, it's a line. That's it. So obviously we can't call this an alternative budget. So am I right in thinking basically what you're saying is you support our budget, you are fully supportive apart from one line of what we are doing as an administration. So I suppose what I'm saying is thank you very much for giving us your wholehearted support. Thank you very much.
I was expecting more.
Okay. Councillor Asif Khan, would you now like to speak?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to, 2 points I'd like to raise. The first point, which was raised about this budget being a green budget and all the flowery words being tossed across the chamber about how green this council is. Words and actions don't match. Actions such as changing green belt to brownfield isn't very green at the bottom of Hempstead Road. That's what's been done. A green bin tax to fill the hole in council budgets, which actually the more that you encourage, the more that you want to do green activities, the more tax you'll pay. That's not very green. And, nothing about polluting vehicles. We'll come to that debate here. 100,000 here, 200,000 here. The air quality, nothing about the air quality here. To an extent, I'll come to that. To the extent that the Council Climate Scorecards is an independent think tank which rates councils by how green they are. Watford Borough Council's at 37%, way down in the league table. So words and flowery words, green words don't match reality. More to do. And that's what we'll encourage you to do. Watford is a proud and rainbow town. And I'd like to focus a little bit on the amendment, which was actually debated and discussed in the licensing committee. So it wasn't 4 minutes before this council, so you need to brush up on your knowledge. Watford is a rainbow town, which is a Guardian newspaper. I'm proud to be Watfordian. I'm proud to be born here, brought up here. It is. And it was in one of my favourite newspapers, The Guardian, it was mentioned. Okay, so the Runnymede Trust, in particular, it's a think tank, published analysis in just October 2022 on the impact of the cost of living. It found that the minority ethnic people make up 15% of the population, but account for 26% of those in deep poverty. Deep poverty is a new term. So you've got poverty, but there's a new term in this cost of living crisis called deep poverty, which is extreme levels of hardship, meaning they struggle to afford everyday basics such as food and energy. They are 2.2 times more likely to be in deep poverty than other ethnic groups. That's the fact. So we talk about, it's a phrase that came from one member, an irresponsible amendment to the budget. 20%, £20,000, irresponsible. Nonsense. Utter nonsense. To deal with deep poverty, to deal with the cost of living, don't put up 8% licence fees compared to everybody else's, which is about 6%, which affects 95% of a particular community. Don't snigger, don't laugh, it's a real issue. And the absolute awful discussions and debates that I see at the licensing committee and this committee over this particular issue was utterly heart-wrenching. You need to grow up sometimes and think about the lives of people and the impact that it's having. This amendment is a small amendment. It has no massive impact on the overall scheme of the budget, but it's been ridiculed. Just grow up. And I propose this, the second of this motion, this slight amendment to the budget, and any reasonable councillor would support it. Thank you.
Thank you. So everybody's finished. I now call upon the Mayor to exercise his right of reply. Mayor Taylor, you have 3 minutes.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grimston. I don't know how to follow that. All I'd say is that sometimes things need to be ridiculed when they deserve it. We've just heard a lot about poverty, about bulky waste, about the environment, about all of these things that Labour apparently think that we're doing wrong as a council, and this is their amendment. One sentence, one change, one small alteration to our budget. If they were serious about the Women's Centre, bulky waste, green bins, they would have put forward an amendment and would have had that discussion, but they haven't. They're not even a serious opposition, let alone an administration in waiting. So let's just talk through some of the things they did raise. The Town Hall project will save £300,000 every single year. It's about efficiency for our residents, as well as creating a community hub supporting our voluntary sector, our businesses and the town. Let's talk about bulky waste items, an important point that Councillor Williams made. If you live in Labour-run Stevenage, of course, you'll pay significantly more to have your bulky waste collected. By the logic of Councillor Watling, there must be lots of fly tipping in Stevenage. The reality is, and Labour need to remember this, the people to blame for fly tipping are the people that do the fly tipping. They always seem eager to blame councils for that. And I mean, after the noise of the last contributor, I would just say that if you're going to be politically opportunistic and cynical, at least be subtle about it. Don't just propose one change for one group of people that haven't actually had an increase in their fees for 7 years. They've been frozen since 2017. There's a statutory duty that those fees reflect the cost of the service. Officers have looked at the cost of the service, and that's why this is being proposed. And so we have a statutory duty to do that. And finally, I'm going to bite the bait. Labour always going about austerity and blame as if it's Vince Cable's fault rather than Gordon Brown's. Let's not try and rewrite history. In 2008, we had a global economic downturn. We had some countries that had a huge deficit. One of them was the UK, after having years and years of Labour in power. And so we then had to make changes. What happened was that Alistair Darling proposed a budget that would have seen bigger cuts, he said, in spending than Margaret Thatcher. So they like to rewrite history, but they are not completely blameless when it comes to the impact of the global downturn in 2008. But I won't go on about economics, although I was an economics teacher. I'm happily discussing with them later. All I would say is that if this is all that Labour can come forward with, I'm really proud that we've got a council that is committed to supporting our residents through the cost of living crisis, protecting frontline services, and putting our money where our mouth is when it comes to responding to the climate emergency.
Thank you. We will now vote on the Labour amendment first. The amendment has been circulated to everyone. I call upon Carol to ask members in turn how they wish to vote.
Thank you, Chair. And I won't include those members who indicated earlier that they had an interest in this particular amendment. So I'll start with you, Chairman.
Against the amendment.
Yeah. Mayor Taylor?
Against.
Councillor Alan Williamson?
Definitely against.
Councillor Bell?
For.
Councillor Clark Taylor?
Against.
Councillor Devenish?
Against.
Councillor Dighton?
Against.
Councillor Ezifid? Councillor Feldman?
Against.
Councillor Hannon?
Against.
Councillor Hoffman?
Against.
Councillor Jeffrey?
Against.
Councillor Johnson?
Against.
Councillor Khan?
For.
Councillor Kloss?
Against.
Councillor Martins?
Against.
Councillor Nembard?
Against.
Councillor Osborne?
Against.
Councillor Pattinson?
Against.
Councillor Rodriguez?
Against.
Councillor A. Safri?
Against.
Councillor G. Safri?
Against.
Councillor Smith?
For.
Councillor Stanton?
Against.
Councillor Stotesbury?
Against.
Councillor Treebar?
For.
Councillor Termaine?
For.
Councillor Walford?
Against.
Councillor Watkin?
Against.
Councillor Watling?
For.
Councillor Wenham?
Against.
Councillor Williams?
Against.
Thank you.
And we.
So now we need to do 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 1, 2, 3, 4, 20. We have 7 for and 25 against, so the amendment is lost.
Thank you, Carol. We now move on to the substantive recommendation. Does the council agree the recommendations as outlined in paragraph 3.0 of the budget and council tax resolution report on pages 49 and 52? I call upon Carol to ask members in turn how they wish to vote.
So again, I'll start with you, Chair.
4.
Mayor Taylor?
4.
Councillor Ahmed?
4.
Councillor Alan Williamson?
4.
Councillor Bell?
I'll abstain on this one.
Councillor Clark Taylor?
4.
Councillor Devonish?
4.
Councillor Dinser?
I thought you were going to leave us out.
No, that was only on the amendment.
Abstain.
Councillor Dighton?
4.
Councillor Ezefid?
Abstain.
Councillor Feldman?
4.
Councillor Hamid?
4.
Councillor Hannan?
4.
Councillor Hoffman?
4.
Councillor Jeffrey?
4.
Councillor Johnson?
4.
Councillor Khan?
Abstain.
Councillor Kloss?
4.
Councillor Martins?
4.
Councillor Nembard?
4.
Councillor Osborne?
4.
Councillor Pattinson?
4.
Councillor Rodriguez?
4.
Councillor A. Safri?
4.
Councillor G. Safri?
4.
Councillor Shah? Councillor Smith?
Abstain.
Councillor Stanton?
4.
Councillor Stotesbury?
4.
Councillor Trebar? Councillor Termaine?
Abstain.
Councillor Warford?
4.
Councillor Watkin?
4.
Councillor Watling?
Abstain.
Councillor Wenham?
4.
Councillor Williams?
4.
Thank you. So we have 26 for, none against, and 9 abstentions. So it's carried.
Well done. Okay, so agenda item 14, motions. We have 3 motions this evening. The first motion has been proposed by Councillor Stotesbury and seconded by Mayor Taylor. An amendment version from that printed in the agenda has been circulated to all members and published on the council's website. I would remind all councillors that the mover of the motion has up to 7 minutes with a right to reply of up to 3 minutes. Everyone else speaking has up to 5 minutes. I now invite Councillor Stotesbury to move the motion. Councillor Stotesbury, you have up to 7 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And will I have the opportunity to speak on the amendment as well, or do I do that now? I do that now? Thanks. Okay. Well, hello, colleagues. So we've tabled today a motion calling on the Mayor of London to recognise that the plans to expand ULEZ to the borders of London does indeed have a direct impact on Watford residents and indeed all residents outside of London, and that we feel that the implementation currently laid out by the Mayor of London is flawed and indeed harmful to some residents in Watford. But for some context first, I mean, air quality clearly is paramount, and just building on one of the points raised in the previous debate, it's something that's already captured in our sustainability strategy. It's something we've been doing work on for many years in Watford, and is indeed a critical part of work that we're doing in the town. And what we've been doing there, for example, is in our Transforming Travel in Watford strategy, we've been working both internally and with neighbouring authorities and with the county council to secure strategic commitments for bus, bike, walking routes across the town and general investment in infrastructure and in the solution. That would, of course, directly improve air quality across the town. What I will say is, as context to this motion, I haven't seen any of that collegiate thinking from the Mayor of London or any engagement with neighbouring authorities on this ULEZ issue. It's basically a push down a mechanism from him, as far as I'm aware. But let's move to the bulk of the motion. So ULEZ is simply lacking because it's a brute force approach. It's a flat charge that affects all residents trying to enter the zone who have a vehicle that doesn't meet a certain standard. In the context of what we've just been saying about fees and charges, it's £12.50 a day. So those worse off are incredibly poorly hit by this, incredibly damagingly hit by this, to the tune of £3,000, £3,500 a year if they have to make a journey into the ULEZ zones routinely. The reason why it's so important as well is the further out of central London, the worse the public transport network becomes. So actually, being outside of London and far from the centre, we're doubly hit by lack of alternatives for public transport, or lack of reliable ones in public transport. And I completely appreciate the point that this should be a national crisis funded by government. And I completely agree, and I'm sure this whole council would agree on that point. But the implementation of the scheme is in the gift of the London Mayor to review and build upon. So how is it fair that the London Mayor thinks it's appropriate to charge Watford residents but then not support them in mitigations that he's applying to London residents? So we're calling for the scrappage scheme to be extended to cover Watford residents. Why should we be punished in the same way as London residents if we have a car that doesn't meet the requirements, but not also given the same support for the same scheme? And indeed, I've seen this raised with residents have raised issues with the ULEZ because of the lack of clarity and the lack of communications from TfL to residents who live outside of London. There's a lot more work to be done there indeed. To make the ULEZ scheme fairer, extend the scrappage scheme, but also let's go further. Let's not just provide a bludgeon approach, let's provide carrot too. We've been calling for Watford stations in Watford train stations to be rezoned to Zone 6. This is in line with distance travelled by many other Zone 6, by many Zone 6 stations, and would be a fair and also carrot approach to go alongside this mechanism proposed by the London Mayor to, in his view, tackle air quality. I think basically we have a choice in this. What we're calling for is fairness for Watford residents. Why should someone just on the side of the border in London receive support through a scrappage scheme, but not someone in Watford? Why should a Watford resident receive a flat regressive tax, but not the support offered by London Mayor for London residents? And why hasn't London Mayor done more to work collegiately with councils? Just to turn on the amendment really quickly, I see in the first section of the council notes, where council notes, there's lots of changes that you propose, and I think some of them are excellent, and thank you for that. But I really take challenge and opposition to your proposed amendments on the scrappage scheme. You're calling for Watford residents to have to pay for the privilege of then paying a revenue towards TfL. So you're calling for Watford Borough Council to pay its fair share towards the scrappage scheme. Well, we won't receive any revenue from the ULEZ, so why should Watford have to pay anything towards the scrappage scheme? And it's on that basis we discussed this amendment earlier. We'll be rejecting your amendment. Thank you.
I now invite Mayor Taylor to second. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you very much. I think it's really important when we talk about this that we actually think about people in Watford who will be directly affected by this charge. And we all want to see cleaner air, but it's about how we do it. And what we're saying at the moment is if you're a Watford resident on a low income with one of the cars that would have to pay this charge, and you've got cancer treatment at Mount Vernon, then you'd have to pay this fee. You'd have no way of having your car scrapped. If you were someone who was a nurse working in Northwick Park, you'd have to pay this fee every time you drove to work, potentially for a night shift. You were someone who was a teacher teaching at a school in Hatch End, you would be expected to pay this when you went in the morning to do your job. So it would affect real people in a quite significant way, many of whom would be on low incomes. It's incredibly regressive. And so what we've said is that surely everyone who is affected by this should be entitled to be part of the car scrappage scheme. We've also said, of course, we want to see improvements to public transport, and above all, we want to see Watford Station rezoned to Zone 6 because we think that's fair when you compare us to places like Epping, which are further out and are also currently in Zone 6. What I find, frankly, flabbergasting is that the Labour Party's proposal is that Watford Council should pay for the car scrappage scheme. We'll get no revenue, we'll get no income from it, but let's burden it onto the Watford taxpayer. Of course, if they were serious about it, maybe they would have put it forward as a budget amendment. We've just been discussing the budget. They've allocated no funding towards this. We've just put a motion now forward saying that the councils going to fund it. My point is, why should Watford Council taxpayers have this extra charge on top of everything else that we're seeing at the moment? It makes absolutely no logical sense to say that Watford Council should be burdened with this charge. It's the London Mayor, the Labour London Mayor, who will receive the funding from the ULEZ charge. They'll of course receive the fines. We also already pay when we use TfL services, when we travel in on buses, trains and tubes that are operated by TfL. So what we're saying is that TfL can have all of those benefits, and then the Watford Labour position is, yeah, that's great, they can have all of the benefits, but we're then going to charge Watford residents extra to help those low income households who want to have their cars scrapped to a more environmentally friendly car. You know, ultimately it comes down to a choice for Watford Labour. They can actually stand up for Watford, or they can do what a Labour Mayor of London wants them to do. And what they've decided today is that they're going to put their party interest above what's the local interest. And it's because they make decisions like that that the voters keep rejecting them at the ballot box.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. I understand that Councillor Khan is moving an amendment, which is to be seconded by Councillor Bell. It has been circulated to all members. Do any members wish to move any amendments to this motion?
Councillor Khan.
Councillor Khan, you can now speak.
Yeah, just a point. Seconded by Councillor Safedi.
Thank you, Chair. So I'm just a bit flabbergasted by the lopsided logic by the Liberal Democrats. I think they're a little bit rattled by the amendment, but I'll explain. I'll explain. So it is. So ULEZ is a blunt instrument, and it does need refining. But the amendment, which is probably a stock Lib Dem motion from their website somewhere, across other areas. Let me carry on. Right, so by de facto, he's writing himself out of a job because he wants to make Watford part of London, a London borough. That's the reality of what their motion states, that actually the scrappage scheme, the Mayor of London pays for it, and we won't pay a penny. We're not part of it because we want to be part of Zone 6. By de facto, you want to be part of London, and that's what we don't want. We want to be Watford, we want to be part of that, and it requires that independence. The ludicrous arguments you're coming out with, I'm just reversing it. That's exactly what your meaning was. So, coming back to the amendment. So, the facts and figures are that it's not the great number of people will be affected by this vehicle. It will be the most polluting vehicles, and we need to do something about those polluting vehicles, whether they travel into London or don't travel into London. And there's something that needs to be done about that. And this council, all of us, voted for that there was a climate emergency, and we need to do something about it. And my rhetorical question to the Liberals is, what are they doing about these polluting cars in London, in Watford? What are they doing about them? Are they asking the Mayor of London to deal with it, which it seems as though delegating the job to the Mayor of London, or does the Mayor and Watford itself need to do something about it? It's about give and take in negotiation with other councils, and this is what this motion is. It's about giving and taking, negotiating and debating and discussing. It's a reasonable amendment, and it's quite unreasonable that we've got a climate change portfolio holder who's quite the most ungreenest one I've seen actually across Hertfordshire, coming up with these emotions left, right and centre. And we've got a really reasonable amendment where we can come together, Labour and Liberals, say that actually the ULEZ is a blunt instrument. There's things that need to change. We need to make sure that Watford residents are part of this. We will play our role as a council in that. Do not go along. We'll be in partnership. Let's work together. That's what this motion is. And what I'm getting is this topsy-turvy twisting round and so on. No, this is it. It's about conducive politics across the border of London, where people do travel. I travel in. Many of you may travel in and out of London. And that's the thing. And it's about that type of politics, not those yahoo type politics. So I do ask all of you to vote for this motion. It's reasonable, it's productive, working together, and it also gives giving and taking. And that is what any partnership is about. So I do for this motion and I ask you all to support this amendment. Thank you.
I wish to reserve my right to speak.
Anybody else wanting to speak now?
Okay, is there any other councillor that wishes to speak? I knew you were going to do that. Right. Bill. Okay. Jenny. Simon. And
Bill, Hagar, Simon, Jenny, and Marion, definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, and Nigel. I don't know whether Tim put his hand up.
Tim, can I just ask, did you put your hand up? Good.
You didn't call me last second.
Okay, so can I remind members that they actually have 5 minutes to speak? Bill.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd simply like to ask that if we are going to vote for this amendment, with all the heat that people are throwing out there, can we not declare if we have a vested interest first and withdraw from voting? Perhaps if we have an older vehicle that would be affected, or by not getting the scrappage scheme we would be affected, then perhaps we'll have a bit of a fairer vote as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, members. I have agreed that Just 1 moment, Councillor Alan Williamson. There will be nobody that will be excluded from this vote. Okay. Nigel Bell, if you wish to speak.
Just a few points. Obviously, I rise to support our Labour.
Can you put your microphone on, please, Nigel?
Sorry, taken away there. No, I just rise obviously to support our Labour amendment, but I just take up what Councillor Stokesbury said when he said about the practical things he was doing on climate emergency. He said, oh, we're talking about bus, bike and walking. I just wondered in a practical way, what more are you doing on air quality? We know obviously we've got bushy arches in our borough, and we know there's the data measure at bushy arches, and of course we know at Wignall Road when you come round the Hornets is there. I know that's with the county council and nationally, but what more practical measures are you going to do on that? Because it's all very well criticising ULEZ. I understand the criticisms that have been done, but we know that the air quality is the major thing this is all about. We can talk about being a blunt instrument, I understand that, but what real practical things are you doing in your role, your portfolio position? You've got your panel next week. Well, yeah, really, yeah. So that's what I'd just like to hear. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Councillor Marilyn Devilish, please.
So I just wanted to come back to the issue of Watford trains, TfL Zone 6. Is my colleague, Councillor Khan, saying that you want Watford taken off the London Underground map because it already sits on the Underground map? So that would be my first question, because if you look at it, it comes just after Watford High Street. So we've got Watford High, Bushy, Watford High Street, Watford Junction, which are already on the London Underground map, but I don't think that makes us London. I think it just means that it makes it more convenient to travel. But as somebody who has been campaigning to get this in Zone 6 for, I would say, the last 15 years, so well before I became a councillor, I am noticing that I'm almost priced out of being able to travel into London. It's the best part of £20 to do a 20-minute journey. That's a lot of cash. And I'm talking about using the Oyster card, which used to be the most reasonable way to travel. So I absolutely would love to see that, because I have had people who live outside of the borough who would typically come in to shop in Watford because it has got fantastic facilities. They are now saying it's becoming far too expensive for them to make that trip, or they are opting for the option which everyone is trying to dissuade, which is getting in a car or getting in an Uber, when if it was more reasonably priced and we were in Zone 6, that would also increase the economy in Watford. So I would say that I'm happy to have it on the tube map. It doesn't make me feel as though I'm trying to be London, but what it does do is it means that I am not being drained every time I make a 20-minute journey into town. So I, for one, want to keep Watford on that London Underground map, and I personally would love to see it to be Zone 6. Thank you.
Yeah, well said.
Councillor Jenny Pattinson.
Chair, I've got a point of personal explanation because the person did, Councillor Devenish did ask me. Yeah, it's okay. Thank you. So the councillor did ask, and we have no intention of Watford stations being our objective, my objective, because that's my personal thing, should be all stations in Watford, including Watford North, should be in Zone 6.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Jenny Pattinson, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be very quick. I just wanted to bring it back to the people, as Peter spoke about. So I want to talk about a personal story. Somebody that I care about very much lives in Oxley Ward in Watford, travels to Mount Vernon daily for cancer treatment in a car that they purchased in early 2000s. They would be paying £12 a day to receive that cancer treatment from the time that the ULEZ comes in, with no access to the scrappage scheme. The motion we put forward would give them access to that scrappage scheme. They do not want that funded by their own taxpayers' money through Watford Borough Council, as per the council amendment here. And I think we need to remember those people when we're voting for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. I just can't believe what I heard a few minutes ago. Councillor Khan mentioned about the way how we wanted to take it, a goodwill for Watford residents to acknowledge the climate change and be pro. We are. Just a few minutes ago, we had a budget. You had a proposal for your budget. We didn't see anything in your proposal what could help the climate change, to support my colleague in the cabinet who fight very hardly alongside with the mayor to bring the green side of Watford. But what you actually said, you want to give it away to Sadiq Khan and take it from Watford residents. I disagree.
Councillor Simon Felton.
Thank you, Chair. During the worst cost of living crisis in a generation, a Labour mayor is introducing a scheme with no consideration to the surrounding towns of London and the massive contribution residents of Watford already make to the London economy. TfL already directly collects fares from residents travelling in from Watford Metropolitan Line, Watford Junction and Bushy, which are classed as special fare zones. These fares are used to subsidise TfL schemes across London, including street maintenance, the ULEZ scheme and the car scrappage scheme. Watford residents are already paying into this. These fares are direct cost on Watford residents set by London, which we see nothing from, not a penny. Not to mention, this is the same Mayor of London that pulled his support from the Metropolitan Line extension scheme, which would have benefited Watford and Hertfordshire and our surrounding towns. It appears Sadiq Khan is completely blind to the wider picture and needs to zoom out. Remember, London has historic links with the market town surrounding Greater London, where it helped make it the capital city it is today. I've already pre-ULEZ extension scheme had many chats with residents and had one resident, an elderly resident, who kept on getting fines via ULEZ, didn't understand how it worked and was losing money left, right and centre, getting these ridiculous fines. And I must say, these ULEZ fines are substantially higher than Watford parking fines are. So let's remember that as well. And let's talk about what Watford's doing for sustainable transport. We've worked on sustainable transport strategy. Barrel bikes, that has been a massive, massive hit. Arriva Click, we've been the one town that's been really trying to launch and go with something. EV charging points, which we've been challenged by Herts County Council to try and introduce. We've been the ones leading it. And let's not forget, we aren't responsible for transport in Watford, but we're leading the way and we're being bigger and bolder. That's what Watford does. And the other great point that Marilyn mentioned was, even with this ULEZ scheme, the London scheme isn't really sort of trying to get people to get on the train, where it's costing you £20 and it costs £12.50 in a car. So this ULEZ scheme is crazy. And as for the moment, I think, yes, there are a lot of valid points in there. However, we've just passed a budget and I didn't see an amendment in the budget for the scrappage scheme. So for that reason, I'm going to have to reject the amendment, but fully support the original motion. Thank you.
I would now like to invite Councillor Stotesbury to exercise his right of reply. You have 3 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll try and be quick. Maybe I'll just nominate Councillor Feldman as my spokesperson, because everything he's just said is what I basically wanted to reply. I mean, Councillor Bell, thank you for asking the question about what we're doing. I would note that we recently had a sustainable strategy task group. Unfortunately, Labour members didn't even turn up to some of those meetings, but I would really welcome any input you would like to have on that. But as has been said, we've been working on massive strategic reviews with County Council. We're one of the leading authorities for EV charging points in Hertfordshire and the leading authority for EV vehicle ownership in Hertfordshire, something we're incredibly proud of and something we've been working on for years. We've also been working on, for example, home energy efficiency improvements. We recently met with an energy improvement, an insulation company in the local area who cited us as a leading authority. They've never seen anything like it anywhere in the country in terms of the schemes that we provide and produce for our residents. On the incredibly perverse logic of wanting to be part of London, no, clearly not. Watford's a proud town. That's not even remotely on the table here. And to suggest otherwise, actually, I think is stirring a pot and risking a misphrased headline on local literature that will go the wrong direction and scare our residents. I would cite, as my council colleague Marilyn Devonish cited, being on the tube map is not the same as being in London. In Essex, Chigwell is in zone 4. Very clearly not in London. So let's move on beyond that nonsense, please. Air quality across the town. Councillor Bell, you made that point. We are monitoring across the town in our sustainability strategy. This is part of our delivery scheme. That is one of the areas that we're looking to address. But in planting tens of thousands of trees, that's one mechanism. General nature and ecology results is one of the other mechanisms. So there is a lot happening right across the town, and indeed, in our council delivery services, there is a huge delivery programme that's being rolled out, and I really encourage you to work with me on that. We have a public sustainability forum, an internal council sustainability forum, and a water quality monitoring forum. Loads of things here where we can really get engaged as groups and come together on this issue. So I really hope that helps steer the way in that regard. And I would just like to note, we're not even the Transport Authority, and we're doing all of these things because it is so critical for our town. So I'd really encourage you to support the work we're doing, support the LC Whip, support the TTIW, the Transforming Travel in Watford strategy, and indeed with the sustainability strategy, support that too. But on this, all we're doing is asking for fairness. Let's not ask Watford residents to have to, again, further subsidise the TfL scheme. Let's just allow them to have access to the same benefits and perks that London residents get for the same scheme. And let's finally rezone our stations for fair travel. Thank you.
Okay, so can I invite members to now vote on the amendments? You've all been given the extra sheet and the amendments are all in red. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands.
9.
Okay, and all against, please raise your hands.
I think it's lost.
25. Okay, so the amendment is lost. So can I ask members to now vote on the substantive motion?
I think if we just say that was circulated separately, that was circulated this evening.
Yeah, obviously the motion was circulated this evening and hopefully we've all got it. Those in favour, please raise your hands. 25.
Yeah, okay.
And those against?
That's carried. Oh,
so
any abstentions?
Are there any abstentions?
9 abstentions, so it's carried, Chair.
Okay, so that motion is now carried. Do you want me to just read all that? No? Good. Oh, gosh, no.
So now we're moving to moving round, changing the next 2 motions.
So
it's on page 15.
Right.
This is what I do.
Okay, members, I'm going to change round the next 2 motions as Councillor Dykton will need to leave the room for the NHS motion. Next, I will be calling on Councillor Dinser to move the motion about creation of a new bid zone in West Watford. After this, I will call on the Mayor to move the motion about the NHS. A motion has been proposed by Councillor Dinser and seconded by Councillor Trebar. Details are contained in the agenda. May I now invite Councillor Dinser to move the motion. You have up to 7 minutes.
I won't be using that. Thank you, Madam Chair. We call on the council to use its powers and influence to create a new bid zone in West Watford, to work with the County Council and other agencies to maintain and upgrade the streetlights in Vicarage Road Precinct so that they can be used as festive lights in the future. Also to provide hanging baskets in the spring and summer along with new signage highlighting the amenities on offer in the precinct. This creation of a new bid could then provide sustained funding for the lights and provide future improvements for the area. This area, I think most of you are familiar what I'm talking about, the Vicarage Precinct, that's a walkway to Watford football ground, which a lot of the visitors visit when Watford are playing home, and a walkway to the hospital. So that would improve that area. And it also is a walkway to a lot of religious organizations around there. You got the mosque around there, you got the Gurdwara, and you got the churches around there. So these festive lights will be used at different time of the year for different events. For example, Baisakhi, which is a very important event for the Sikhs, Eid for the Muslims, Christmas and any other Christmas for the Christian community, and any other religions that we have in the town, and any other festive culture events that are taking place. So this will also generate money from the businesses there, and it will do up the area. We've been asking for this in alternative budgets in the last years for a bid to be spent on that area. It has not come forward. So we're willing to look at this where the businesses can work with us and other agencies, Hertfordshire County Council, so it can be sustained in the future. Thank you.
Okay, I can now invite Councillor Trebar to second. You have up to 5 minutes.
Can I second and reserve my right to speak?
Do any members wish to move any amendments to this motion? If so, can they indicate now by raising their hands?
Can I ask a question?
Of course, Councillor Devonish.
I'm just interested to know, because one of the issues that we had with the bid in the areas just outside of the town centre, it was prohibitive in terms of the cost of them joining the bid. They were small businesses, they couldn't afford the fees and revenues. So can I just clarify, what would it cost those businesses in Vicarage Road to actually join the bid?
We will have to look at the overall cost of the lights, which I've spoken to Helen Smith last year. And whatever the cost of that will be, we'll try. Obviously, some businesses that are doing better than the others, they might be able to pay more. And then Herts County Council and Watford Council should contribute towards that. We won't be putting so much burden on and this will actually generate more business for them. And that precinct is very multicultural. It's like being in a part of Europe, with all the different restaurants and the bars and people sort of enjoying themselves there. This will generate a really good theme for that area.
Okay, so nobody else put their hands up to speak. So,
Did Councillor Tree?
yes, she was
in favour. Any
members wish to speak on the motion? Smith. If you've raised your hands, please can you raise them again so I can just double check? Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. Can I ask Councillor Ravi Martins to speak on this subject?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to raise one little point. And I think there was a total misunderstanding of what a bid is about. Bid is business-led, it's not council-led to start with. That's number one. Number two, for a bid to succeed, you need the local businesses to come on board. You need the local businesses to drive it, because there is actually a cost element to those businesses. Clearly, there is a benefit. Councillor Dinser, I think if all you want is festive lights, a bid is not the right way to do it. The way you do that is by engaging the businesses, getting them to subsidize, and then maybe approaching the council to help with that subsidy. That is the sensible way to do it. I know that because that's what we've done in parts of my ward. I've been down this road before because I had for a long time thought that Market Street and Queen's Road should be brought into bid. The reason it didn't is because the local businesses said, no, we could not afford it, we would not pay for it. So that's really the point I wanted to make to Councillor Dinser. Well-intentioned, I can see the benefits of festive lights, but bid is not the right way to do it.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think in essence what we're doing is we are talking about a business-led scheme here. We're also talking about working in partnership with those businesses. I think, a bid in an area like West Watford will be very different to a town centre bid. It will be focused on different things, different parts of the community. As Councillor Dinser said, it is a gateway to the football ground, the hospital, and it's an area where that has lacked a bit of investment. And I think it can be business-led, it can be community-led, working in partnership together, the council perhaps facilitating some of that. Because I think, it could be a great way to, again, have that gateway to some fantastic parts of our town. It's a really good thoroughfare. So I think what we're just asking here is to start that process of working together, to have the business-led thing, to talk to the businesses about what they want and how we can help them. I think this is where this is coming from with this motion.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Watkin.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I just want to say two things, really. Have you consulted with the businesses themselves and explained what the implications financially to them? I suspect not. And when they realise what you're going to ask them to contribute to make this viable, I suspect you'll get very little take-up. But more to the point, I think you should go and talk to our colleagues in Tudor Ward who do a brilliant job around the Tudor Arms with lights and regular activities to stimulate that area to make it a real community focus. Frankly, the Herts County Council Locality Fund or Neighbourhood Area Fund, all these pots of money would help you, instead of just asking the council to top up, show yourself really being properly engaged with the community you're supposed to represent.
Thank you, Councillor Watkin. And last but by no means least, Mayor Taylor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Grimston. I mean, I think it's worth reminding the context that we face in Vicarage Ward. Last year, the Liberal Democrats were just 200 votes behind. Labour had the best ever result in Vicarage for about 20 years, and clearly the councils are rattled. So a few things that we should emphasise. First is the point that Councillor Watkin just made. Christmas lights don't depend on bids. If you look at St Albans Road, I mean, I'd commend the amazing work of Councillor Dawn Ellen Williamson and Councillor Ian Stotesbury working with local businesses to get Christmas lights. There's no bid. It's just actually about rolling up your sleeves and making these things happen. The same, of course, has happened in Tudor Ward for many, many years. I visited lots of businesses on Vicarage Road precinct recently. I had one day where I went into 4 of them. They'd asked to speak to me. And you know how many of them asked me to start a bid? None. None of them raised it. That wasn't the issue that they wanted to talk about. So there are ways of improving areas without hiking up the business rates of those businesses, because that's what you would do. If you look at the town centre bid, the budget for that, they have a team of staff. They raise between £400,000 and £500,000 a year. The idea that Vicarage Road precinct would somehow mirror that operation is just, you know, a non-starter. So I'm very keen to work with local businesses. We can work with businesses in a number of ways, but I don't think setting up a bid is actually the way to go. And if we look at this motion that's been drafted, I mean, there's a paragraph that starts kind of mid-sentence. It's clearly just been cobbled together. It's not a serious approach. I'm very happy to work with businesses right across the town to support them. But the idea that the solution in Vicarage Road precincts to their issues is to increase their fees for all of those businesses, I think would be the wrong way to go.
Thank you, Mayor Taylor. Councillor Trebar.
Yeah, I'm saddened to hear that, actually, Mayor, because I spoke to those same businesses. Sorry, yeah, I'm saddened to hear that, Mayor, because I spoke to those same businesses the same week that you went to see, and they told me a very different story, actually. They told me how they'd asked you for help. Yeah, and they were unsure about how to go about it. So it was from those discussions that we came up with the bid option. The bid option, because we're talking about football ground as well, which obviously is a huge business. And that area, as you know, needs investment and it needs looking after. You know, we've got some great long-standing businesses. You mean, we've all heard the sad story about Dominic's going out of business. People don't know they're there. It's a gateway, as you know, for the away fans when they come down that road. And, you know, it needs investment, it needs celebrating. And I think that the bid is a very good way of doing that and getting businesses involved.
Well done.
Thank you. Can I ask Councillor Dinza, would you like to sum up? You now have 3 minutes.
I think I think most of it has been covered. When we talk about bid, it's not going to cost what it costs in the high street, because the lights, if you look at the size of the precinct, it's not. What we're asking for is a help that we as councillors will get out there and talk to the businesses. And if they can afford it, we'll talk to the football ground. And we're asking for some assistance from the council officers who I've spoken to, Helen Smith I've spoken to. And if there is a possibility of doing that, that's what we'll do. If it doesn't work out, if it's too costly, we'll cut back on the bid. And we'll get some sort of stuff that money in that precinct money has not been spent in that area for a long time. Council has spent money in other areas, St Albans Road and other areas, but neglected West Watford, Rapinda Road, and it's not just that elections are coming up. We've been asking for years. It's on record. You can go back and check your records where we have asked year after year to put that money in. It only seems to happen when Lib Dems win a seat in that area, like the St Albans Road got improvement when you got your foot in there. Otherwise, you neglect the areas which you don't represent. So that's not what we're for our area we represent. We talk to our residents. We've been to the shoppers. Sarah Jane has explained. They give her a different story, what they told you. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm asking members to vote on the motion. All those in favour, please show your hands. 9. All those against, please show your hands. Okay, thank you. The motion has been lost. Now, thank you, Councillor Digton. I have to ask you to go. Bless you. Okay.
Hi, I'm going to need to absent myself as well for this motion, so I will depart at this point too, owing to a conflict of interest with my employment. Thank you.
Sorry, I just want to clarify if I needed to also raise that I work for NHS because of some parts of that motion.
She needs to go.
Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, so Councillor Tremaine and Favour, if you'd like to now leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No, thanks. Thanks. Thank you. 1 year.
I'm just going to withdraw from the debate.
Yeah, I don't know what it is. I'm very funny.
As possible, please. The time is carrying on. It's not time for conversations.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. So, motion has been proposed by Mayor Taylor and seconded by Councillor Alan Williamson. Details are contained in the agenda. I now invite Mayor Taylor to move the motion. You have up to 7 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Grimston. I would just say at the start, I know that the monitoring officer will be following the letter of the law, but to me, to have a situation where we're debating the NHS and we can't hear or even have involved people who work for the NHS, we've all got links to the NHS. We've all been patients there. We've had children born, all the rest of it. So it just feels to me disappointing that is the case. I'm not disputing that might not be in line with national rules. But on the substance of the motion, I think the first thing to acknowledge is our NHS is in crisis. The latest statistics show that we've got 7.2 million people waiting for treatment, 7.2 million. That's over 10% of the population. In 2015, that figure was 3 million. I mean, it's still very high, but it's more than doubled since that year. And we need to take drastic action to respond to it. We've got over 2 million people who are waiting more than 18 months for treatment, 18 months of treatment when the target is 18 weeks. Another key issue for me is funding. Even though spending on the NHS has been rising consistently, it's not as much as many other countries. If you look at spending per head compared to USA, Germany, Netherlands, Canada, and the rest of them, we spend a lot less. And a writer in The Economist, I'm sure we all read that regularly, puts it like this recently: ambulances are full because A&Es are full, emergency departments are full because the hospitals are full, and the hospitals are full because they struggle to discharge to social care. And I know many people here tonight have an expertise in that. Capital spending on the NHS has struggled for many years. And so the Liberal Democrats nationally have got a 5-point plan to respond to this, which involves fixing social care, more hospital beds, expanding mental health support services, which are so important, and also launching a paramedic recruitment drive, as well as having more transparency as we find out where the problems are. In the long term, the Liberal Democrats want to see an end to the staffing crisis and see 8,000 more GPs trained, as well as seeing the expanded role for community training them to deal with issues like they do in Scotland and Wales, relieving pressures on other parts of the NHS. Locally, the key issue for me is Watford General. The council has done so much to support that. We now have the multi-storey car park. Of course, the benefit of that, and there has been controversy in the past, but the benefit of having that car park there is that the plans for the new build are, of course, on the old car park, anyone who visits that site, I was there yesterday, we all know that the NH staff do incredible work. We've got people at AGA who work there day in, day out, volunteers, all doing great work, but the time for talking about investment is long since past. The government have talked about it many times. The Prime Minister, but one, I think it is now, Boris Johnson, said that the money was going to be made available. We've talked and talked and talked about it, and I think we need to make it clear that actually they need to get on with it. They have the land there, the need is there, and we need to back our NHS. So I hope that everyone here can support the motion tonight.
I now invite Councillor Alan Williamson to second. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. I am seconding this motion because I'm passionate about the NHS and the wonderful work they do for patients / our residents in our community. I am really proud that we have the NHS and we need to do something we can to protect it for the future. Our NHS is under serious pressure because it does not have resources and facility it needs. The figures speak for itself. Locally, 71% of ambulances are waiting longer than 30 minutes before handing over patient to NHS. I just say this, personal to me, somebody that I know went down, cancer patient, went to the doctor, emergency, sent to the hospital from 9 o'clock and was there until 11 o'clock. This is disgraceful. The government needs to fund the NHS. The council work closely and cooperate in making the planning work. So they need to get their act together and support our NHS. And I hope everyone will support this motion tonight.
Okay, so can I have your hands raised if any members wish to speak? Jenny, Mark Hoffman. Can you raise your hands quite high so I can see? Sorry, because you are all on flat. Oh, Nigel Bell. Thank you. I think I've got everybody. So I've got Sarah Jane Treebar, Dennis Watlin, Karen Clark-Taylor, Ian Stotesbury, Jenny Pattinson, Mark Hoffman, and Nigel Bell. Is anybody I've missed out? Okay, so the time is getting on, so please make your comments to the point. Thank you. So Sarah Jane Treebar.
I'm actually going to shock everybody by going against the grain tonight and not making a very easy political point that I could make about that very land. But I'm not going to go there. I'm not.
Just do it. Apologies.
Sorry. Are you okay? Need some more time? What I will do is completely agree with my colleagues that the NHS have done a fantastic job and that the workers at the hospital do a fantastic job and that the residents of Watford and the people that work there deserve a better hospital. So I completely support you.
Thank you. Dennis Watlin.
Thank you, Chair. I will try and keep this as brief as possible, but I just want to state, yeah, I will. Interrupting me makes it longer. Jack, don't interrupt me. I'll be supporting this motion because I quite literally need the NHS to live as a type 1 diabetic. And a quick personal anecdote to how urgently an upgrade to Watford General needs to be. Obviously, as a diabetic of over 20 years, naturally, I've got a few eye problems. I had minor retinopathy last year, and I needed some minor laser eye surgery. Due to NHS delays, I only got that last week, and now my retinopathy is sight threatening. So I could break the fourth wall here. In a few years' time, I might be blind. But that is how urgent we need a bit more funding and the new development in Watford General, because I'm a living example of where the delays to this funding is actually affecting my life personally. I hope I'm allowed to express his opinion and it won't be brought back against me in the follow-up, but because of that, I will be supporting this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Watling, and I do wish you all your best with your treatment. Councillor Karen Clark-Taylor.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I would like to follow the example of Councillor Watling there and just draw on my own personal experiences of Watford General. Fortunately, nothing as severe as in that case, but my experiences have been limited really at Watford General to the maternity services. As I'm sure we're all aware, back in 2021, the Care Quality Commission downgraded Watford's maternity facilities and they now require improvement. If you read that report, which is split into 5 sections, under the section of safety, that is one of the areas that requires improvement. You read the report and substantially all of the comments are actually about the building and not the midwives, not the equipment. The rooms are too small to safely fit the required equipment that we have in the 21st century for safe deliveries. There are insufficient shower and toilet facilities. Because of the COVID pandemic and the reallocation of side rooms, there are open facilities for bereaved mothers who've lost their babies, is cited in this report. What also comes up in the report and what the inspector noted is that the senior managers said funding would be obtained for a new hospital facility and that midwifery services would be the priority. That was back in 2021. That was noted back then. This is the CQC, a government-backed inspection body, saying, we know there's a massive problem here and still we don't have that funding. If our MP wants to do something for local families, there is absolutely no way that we can get our rating brought from requires improvement back up without changes to this building. Without standing up for us, he is condemning the women of Watford to give birth in a facility that is rated as requires improvement indefinitely. This is not good enough and he needs to step up.
Councillor Nigel Bell.
Thank you, Chair. I won't be long. Obviously, I fully support the motion. This could be a Labour Party motion, this, couldn't it? Will Labour Party have a proud tradition of supporting Watford General in their town? As I'm sure you all remember, all the history, 1998, Clare Ward, all the other times when we fought to keep Watford Hospital in Watford, not always backed by all parties, but I'm pleased tonight we all come together on this. Very important that Councillor, I see Councillor Stanton, not in his head, I don't understand that, because we are all together on this tonight, aren't we? And the key thing about having Watford Hospital here in Watford, as we fought in 98 and others have done, is to try and make sure we get the funding properly. But it's a key point that your colleague next to you pointed. I'm on that health scrutiny at County Council with Councillor Chris White. The CQC came up, you're quite right, and that is a key thing I raised and he raised and others about that funding and the investment, which is still not there. So, and the good thing is that we've got it, certainly at County Council, we've got the support of Liberal Democrats, I know, across in St Albans, in Hertsmere, and that's actually a good thing. So it's good that we're able to come together tonight as Labour and Liberal Democrats, and we must need to keep pushing the government and obviously Dean Russell to finally step up to the plate. So I fully support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mark Hoffman.
Okay, great. One of the most critical issues facing the NHS today is bed blocking. Patients who are medically ready to leave hospital but are held on hospital wards because they have nowhere else safe to be moved on to. A staggering 2.7 million hospital bed days are occupied each year by older patients who do not need to be in hospitals. The doctors I've spoken to tell me that the lack of social care beds means that there are significant delays in discharging older patients from hospitals. This is worsening the backlog with hospital waiting lists and costs spiralling further out of control. Critical patients, particularly those with cancer, are unable to receive the treatment they need in a timely fashion. In the years before the pandemic, social care spend was savaged with multi-billion-pound cuts. As a result, today care capacity is at rock bottom. The cost of an older person occupying a hospital bed is around £3,500 per week. According to the National Audit Office, bed blocking is costing the government more than £1.2 billion per year. Social care providers estimate that the average cost of supporting an elderly resident in a care home is around a third of the cost of a stay in hospital. But state-funded care homes receive only £550 to £650 per resident per week, 2.5 times less than in other parts of Western Europe. This is totally insufficient to cover the cost of staff, food, soaring energy bills, and accommodation costs. Underfunding is leading to thousands of social care providers going bust around the country and preventing healthy patients from leaving hospital wards. As tonight's motion shows, NHS capacity is at crisis levels, and we are all paying the price. There are 3.2 million people over the age of 80 in the UK. Almost 1 million of them live with advanced frailty and dementia, and this number is only going up. To support them, there are only 450,000 care home beds. This number, which is 55,000 less than in 2015, could drop by a further 140,000 as no credible government policy is in place to save this vital sector. As we take decisive action now on social care fees and funding, beds will continue to be lost and blocked across the country. Our vulnerable older population will bear the greatest burden of a national crisis, and our hospitals will not have the resources to care for those who most need acute medical attention. With the pandemic and Brexit over, it's about time the government finally fixed our broken social care sector once and for all. Please support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Hoffman. Councillor Ian Stotesbury, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, everyone, and especially those who shared personal stories. Really brave and welcome. I just wanted to add, we've spoken about the facilities in the NHS, and they're completely run down, in need of investment. Councillor Hoffman just spoke at length about how just the structural funding of social care and the NHS is backwards, and there is clear metrics, clear mechanisms there where government can invest more in social care to actually reduce the overall burden on hospitals directly. And at a preferential cost to the taxpayer. I want to turn quickly to staff recruitment and retention. As we age in our population, the amount of staff that we need in the NHS is critical and paramount. We already are short to the tune of 40,000 nurses nationwide and a similar number for doctors. To train a new nurse or to train a new doctor takes years upon years. This crisis is not going away anytime soon. The best way we can try to support our NHS is to give them the facilities that they need to work in an environment that also helps the staff work better and indeed have access to those technologies that allow them to do their jobs to a better outcome and indeed to allow them to see more patients. I speak to rota coordinators in local hospitals, and they tell me at length how their staff are having to pick up bank shift after bank shift after bank shift to fill the rota because there just is not enough staff. In this motion, we're really careful and really keen to point out just how hard our staff work. There should never be any suggestion that because of these outrageous figures for waiting times, the staff are to blame. What is to blame is the lack of funding in the system. We need to be really aware and really eyes open. This crisis is not going away anytime soon, but we can do our damnedest to invest in the facilities in the short term and invest in social care in the short term to at least alleviate the pressure. I would also point out that in terms of retention and recruitment of staff, full access to international healthcare professionals is important. Freedom of movement is something that would certainly improve this issue. But right now, here, what we're calling on is the fundamental funding that we can deliver immediately for the NHS. And in Watford, it was called a shovel-ready deal, so let's get on with it.
Thank you, Councillor Stotesbury. And last but by no means least, Jenny Pattinson.
Thank you, Chair. I will keep it very short because Mr Hoffman said most of the things that I would want to say. Fully support the motion. The NHS is woefully underfunded. But to make matters worse, as my colleague has just spoke about, the adult social care sector that I am passionate about and that I've worked in most of my career is significantly underfunded too. I run care homes. I have empty beds. I would love to help the hospitals and the NHS put patients that are in hospitals into a more caring, warm and loving environment where they will thrive. However, I can't do that because I cannot recruit nurses, I cannot recruit care staff, and the funding from the government for those beds is the fair cost of the care that we provide. We require charitable contributions in order to deliver an outstanding service to the vulnerable, frail, older residents that we care for. In order to fix the NHS, you also have to fix the social care system. It needs funding in both parts equally and with parity, which is something that we've not seen in the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Patterson. Can I invite Mayor Taylor to exercise his right of reply? You have up to 3 minutes.
I'll be very quick. Thank you, Councillor Grimston. Of course, welcome everyone's contributions. Agree with the comments that have been made. The only thing that raised an eyebrow slightly was when Councillor Bell said this was so good it could be a Labour motion. It's far too well drafted for that. So a few quick points I would just like to make. I welcome the outbreak of unanimity, but I think there's one just thing I want to emphasise. I think sometimes there's an assumption that this is kind of a Watford versus other bits of the region, and that's how it's portrayed. I think it's really important to remember that the leader of Three Rivers Council supports what the NHS Trust is saying. The leader of St Albans and City and District Council, the MP for St Albans, they all support what we're proposing here. We're proposing investing, of course, in Watford General, but also improvements in the hospitals in Hemel and St Albans as well. So I'm glad that we have unanimous support on this final motion.
Okay, so the motion as set out in your pack, can I have a show of hands for all those in favour?
Unanimous.
Okay, unanimous.
Thank you.
So, thank you. That motion is now carried. Thank you, everyone. That concludes the meeting for this evening.